So we've talked many times on theCUBE and now it's kind of playing out. Welcome back. Hello, welcome back to theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 2021 Virtual. I'm John Furrier, your host of theCUBE. We have Paul Cormier, who's here as the President and CEO of Red Hat, CUBE alumni. Paul, always great to have you on. The leader of Red Hat, now President and CEO for a year, I think about a year now, we're looking at under your belt, now part of IBM. Great to see you.
You too, nice to see you again, John.
So we've talked many times on theCUBE and now it's kind of playing out in real time. The software world with open source has gone mainstream. The conversation was moved to the cloud. Okay, people move to the cloud, cloud native emerges, DevOps been around for a while, but now the conversation is cloud for the enterprise. And the enterprise is it's a tough world. It's complicated, there's a lot of legacy, there's a lot of value, and you want the new stuff. This is what the conversation is now. It's shifted to, I got cloud, it's hybrid. What's your reaction to that?
Well, you know, it really is, as you say, it's complicated, but it's evolving in really, really fast. I mean, you know, I think you remember, we've been here a lot. You first remember, you know, first software was eating the world and open source software was eating the world. And then every company is becoming a software company. All true, but that evolution continues today with the proliferation of hybrid cloud environments that it encompasses everything from data centers to public cloud services to, and even now we'll talk about it too, far-flung edge deployments. That's all now part of the cloud. I mean, this is all what makes up hybrid. I like to always say that hybrid really is the new data centers, but now CIOs and IT leaders, they need to reconsider what their role here is. And the way we look at it is every CIO now needs to be a cloud operator because hybrid is what their environment is now today that used to be all in their data center. But one of the things this really makes choice even more important for CIOs and IT leaders. They need to address specific needs, not only to the organization, but even as they change and evolve in this, because it really is a dynamic environment. I mean, think about it. I just mentioned edge and how important that is to the CIOs. We weren't even talking about that 2 years ago. So there's not a single answer here, right? And you know, there wasn't a single answer when it was all in one building or in one data center, but now it's even more complex. So we need to enable really a new wave of cloud operators here with technologies that can be deployed as cloud services as well as on premises. I mean, we'll talk more about this too, but we'll talk about this at the summit. We talked about this at the summit. Cloud services become really important, especially managed services, for example, because we're so complex. The hybrid brings so much power, but it is complex. You know, CIOs need help with this. They need help managing this now. And so that's really where a lot of our focus is today.
It's interesting you say there's no single answer. I would agree with you because there's now, you can actually do a lot more customization with cloud and hybrid. I think there's a general sentiment and directionally correct answer in the industry is that hybrid is operating model. Right? And I think you guys are have a whole division of SREs. You know, Google talks about this all the time in their cloud, site reliability engineers. And I think you're seeing that in educational institutions, which we'll talk about. But I think this idea of cloud scale as the new IT, and you mentioned hybrids, the new data center. You know, I don't want to offend my IT friends out there, but they're kind of all realizing it too, that if they don't understand how to operate cloud scale, they'll be irrelevant. And they understand that their jobs are not just provisioning, storage, networking, and servers. Those are, now involved in a hybrid architecture. And by the way, there is no one recipe. It's dependent, each enterprise can have its own set of architecture based on their workloads. Again, so I buy that's no single answer, but there is hybrid. I think that's pretty well understood. I mean, do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that, but let's let's unpack it a little bit and take a look at the building blocks a bit, right? You know, we talk about open source is what's driving all of this now, and everything we're talking about here is built in and around Linux, and it was only possible because Linux was so open, so available, and became so powerful. That's now been the platform that all this new innovation is built around. I mean, I oftentimes say, and it's true, the cloud just wouldn't be here had Linux not only made its way in the open source development environment, but made its way into the enterprise to enable it to, companies like us that make it enterprise ready, secure, etc. So I think that's really an important thing to understand here. So when you talk about skills that the CIOs need, certainly SRE skills, operation skills, etc., but they also need Linux skills and even open source skills. So I think that's important. Everything that's coming down the road in this space is open source based and built in and around Linux. Things like AI, quantum computing, autonomous vehicles, IoT, and out to the edge, all built on a foundation of Linux and open source. So we see it in the enterprise everywhere now. I mean, the survey, we did a survey out there, and looking at the survey of CIOs out there, open is predominant out there, Linux is predominant out there, and hybrid is predominant and growing in a pretty big clip every year.
Paul, I want to get your reaction to something, because this is maybe kind of a dot connecting moment for me, because I want to get your thoughts on this, because it's a pattern I'm seeing emerging now multiple times. And usually I thought this was kind of a one-off, but I'm starting to see it. Well, I want to get your thoughts on this. You guys have been super successful with open source in the enterprise, super successful over decades, building a community and an ecosystem. Now with open source, with cloud native specifically, we're seeing end users participating more in the contribution. I mean, it starts out with the hyperscalers, but now you're seeing kind of, I would call general purpose mainstream enterprises contributing projects. Not necessarily their expertise, but they've been participating and taking the goodness of open source and bringing that into their enterprise. And obviously relying on you guys as well. But now I'm starting to see the pattern where people are relying on you to bring your community to them, and they merge their communities with you guys and being kind of a steward there. Is that a pattern? Do you see that evolving? Because we've heard that on multiple interviews on theCUBE, where we've heard end users say, we love the Red Hat ecosystem. And that seems to be more and more about they want to be building their ecosystem. So you did it for yourselves, you did it for the industry. Now enterprises want this service. Is this a pattern? What's your reaction to that? Can you?
Yeah, it actually is a pattern, and it's actually one of the reasons why innovation is moving so quickly right now. I mean, as I just said, this whole area here in infrastructure and cloud and developer environments, hybrid included, it's all built in and around. It's all built in and around Linux. And in the past, what's happened and driven by open source development. In the past, what happened? Look at the old-fashioned way, right? Where a company like us would be a software company, not like us, but any old software company would be, in their stovepipe, talking to their customers, getting their requirements, and then bringing those requirements back from the customer base, and then trying to work that into their products over time, get that back out to the customer to test it and try it, see does it work. That's probably a 5-year journey for big requirements, for big change requirements. You look at now with actually end users now participating in upstream development, they're building their requirements into that upstream, which is our development environment, and actually that's what feeds our products. And so we've cut out the middleman, if you will, completely in there. Now, when we're building those requirements into our future R&D work in the upstream, and then we bring that down into a product back into their enterprise for them to use in production. So it cuts out years of time for that innovation to get from concept to building to productizing to production. And I think, John, that's one of the big reasons why that customer base participating is one of the big reasons why we're seeing innovation move like we've never seen it before in the enterprise, which in the old days, that was a stodgy place where they didn't want to move very quickly.
Yeah, and the values there, I mean, I think it's clear with the pandemic, we're going to get to this towards the last talking track here, but with the pandemic, I think it's pretty clear where the value is and the speed to capture opportunities and growth. I think enterprises are realizing that. And I think the power of the ecosystem is a modern era kind of phenomenon that is now kind of showing its value and clearly in the market. And I think people who harness communities and ecosystems, not try to fork them, but connect them and intersect them and kind of play well together. So again, this is an open source concept, kind of reimagined. So we'll keep an eye on that. So I want to get to your comment in the keynote. You mentioned it at the top here. Every CIO, it has to be a cloud operator. That reminds me of all the startups and all the positioning statements. Every company needs to be a software company. Every company needs to be a media company. Every company needs to be a cloud operator. So I love that. What does it mean? Because I could say, hey, Paul, I have a cloud. I'm working on Amazon. Or is that it? Or wait a minute, I got 365 over here, and I'm using BigQuery over here. I might use Oracle over here. I mean, all these multi-cloud conversations. So it's confusing.
Yep.
Tell me what it means.
If you look at it, we were really one of the first ones to really build around this hybrid concept. And the reason why we were one of the first ones is because what did Amazon hit the world 12 or 13 years ago or something like that? They were the first major cloud. And at the time, that the narrative was that every application was going to move to the cloud tomorrow, right? Well, because, as I said earlier, everything is built in and around open source and Linux, we were very involved with our customers as they tried to move those first applications to the cloud. So certainly there's a lot of value in moving to the cloud, but our customers quickly realized, with us helping them, that, this is great, but not every application is suited for the cloud. For any cloud, but also I may want to run multiple clouds because another cloud provider over here might have a better service than this particular service over here, vice versa. And so we were in the middle of that. So one of the decisions we made 7 or 8 years ago, everything we did in that last 7 or 8 years around the portfolio, whether it was build new products, M&A, acquiring new companies, et cetera, was built around that hybrid portfolio. What that means is a common platform that sits both on-premise in bare metal machines, virtual machines, private clouds on-premise, multiple clouds across out in the enterprise, that common platform so that developers, operators, and the security people have that common platform to build with. Because just like in Linux, even though they're all derived from open source upstream, they're all different. They all make different choices in how they're going to configure themselves. So that's important. So now we're out there with these multiple clouds. In one of our surveys, we see our CIOs telling us now that they're using on the average, I think, 6 clouds today, and they expect that to go to 8 to 10 over the next 3 to 5 years. So how are they going to manage that? How are they going to secure that? How are their operations people going to operate with that? That's all the things that we've been working on over the last number of years. So from that common platform, which is sort of the basis, which is OpenShift, to underneath it, which is the Linux operating system, which is RHEL, that spans all those footprints that I talked about. Then also you look at what one of the latest trends is as well is managed services, because what customers are now telling us is, okay, I've got this environment, that this hybrid is now my data center. It means I have to worry about these apps all in different footprints. I want the platform to act like a cloud. In some cases, I don't want to even manage it. I want you to manage it for me, because for many reasons, I want great uptime. I might not have the right skill sets in my IT organization. And so I want you to manage it. And so that's where we develop managed services. And that's where we have, as I said, a large group today, a large SRE group that's providing those managed services no matter where our platform runs for our customers. Also, what I talked about in my keynote today is that to support that thought process is that we're doing a lot of research in this. And so, in a typical computer science research world, of the past, you might really be into the real computer science of research. We, with the consortium around Mass Open Cloud, with Boston University, MIT, Harvard, Northeastern, with this consortium, we're running Mass Open Cloud on all Red Hat with the collaboration of these universities. And we're really focusing on the SRE aspect of it. What do we need to manage it? What do we need around automation to manage it? What do we need around AI to manage it? What do we need for tools to manage it? And this really goes down to what I fully briefly said in the beginning, is that every CIO and IT executive now has to be their own cloud operator, because they are effectively stitching all these disparate clouds together. So that's where a big part of our focus takes us all the way from upstream development to product to the research we're doing for the next 3 to 5+ years.
I got to say, the hybrid cloud is a new data center, which is implying IT and cloud operators or CXOs and CIOs is interesting because it's validated by McKinsey's recent report that came out that said there's $1 trillion of untapped value in one, retrofitting existing infrastructure and operations, and two, net new use cases that the cloud enables. So there's clearly now two categories of value proposition that businesses are facing. One is, kind of take care of the existing and then also bring in the new that cloud enables. So, I think that's really key, and that will drive the business leaders to force IT, if you will, to be agile and adaptive to that. So totally agree on that. I love this open cloud initiative. You mentioned the mass open cloud, which I know is kind of like this beanpot for techies. For people who know what that means, it's in the Boston area. These institutions. This is going to be a training and an opportunity to train this next generation. And if you take it to the next level, cybersecurity is also in this kind of net new novelty, interdisciplinary component. So you got engineering, which is like DevOps engineering, and then systems engineering and computer science intersecting together with kind of this data discipline. So it hits cybersecurity, which is a board level conversation. It hits the new business model opportunities, which is a driver. This is new. There's no pre-existing curriculum. How do you explain that to heads of the departments and the deans of these institutions saying, no, it's an engineering thing, no, it's a computer science thing, no, it's a business school thing with data science. What's your conversation with folks in the industry when you say this is a different thing?
The university, the university is getting it was actually one of the first things. This is, what you'll see, I talked to Dr. Bob Brown from President BU earlier in an interview, and this is what we imagined with them early on. And even they've brought those disciplines together now in what they call the Harry Institute, where they bring data, computer science, engineering, as you say, and now even operations. It's almost like systems engineering on steroids. It's a really big spanning system, and so the universities are starting to understand. That's why these universities in the consortium. That's why we're working here. But also, the industry is kind of learning it the hard way, because now that they get some of their developers starting to move some of their application developments out into one, maybe two clouds, and now they have to figure out how they're going to do all those things that we talked about: develop, secure, operate it. So they're learning the hard way that this is the new discipline, because that's reality. I also think that, as I said, like anything in tech, we always say this is going to happen tomorrow. I also think, like I said, when cloud first came out, everybody's saying, I'm moving every app to the cloud tomorrow. We even had customers that bought into that, said, we're moving, going full bore. But they realized once they got into it, it wasn't practical. So don't take me wrong, cloud brings a ton of value here. But from a practical perspective, it's going to be some apps and across many clouds. And so now they're having to deal with the IT execs and the CIOs having to deal with it. So they're learning really fast because of the reality that they have to deal with. Now, having said all that too, it also brings up why managed services you're seeing is so popular right now, because as that's moving so fast, they just don't have the skills necessary in many cases to really operate and run in this type of environment. It brings so much power, but the skills aren't necessarily there in the industry. So now you see the connection between the industry, where we sit in it, and even the universities now looking at this whole big problem as you said, John, actually a new discipline.
Yeah, I think one final leg of the three-legged stool is at the business schools, because when you think about systems programming, you mentioned that, and I love to go back in history and look at the history of operating systems. And Paul, we've talked about this in the past, and you guys know a lot about operating systems from a technology standpoint. It's not just about a productivity suite for a user or a department with a system. It's a company that needs to be programmed. So when people want to globally operate their business, that's software defined. Right. This is now happening, right? So the new leaders in these companies that want to run these global companies at scale and operate them, just like operating the business, not necessarily operating a tech or a shiny new toy, have to build the operating system for the business. To me, I think that's where I see IBM looking at cloud differently and saying, hey, this is an operating system under the covers for the business. The applications are multifold, from an application for productivity to an edge device, industrial or consumer, user, work at home. I mean, it's a plethora of applications. What's your reaction to that? You see the same thing?
Yeah. I mean, frankly, I think this is an area that a lot of the infrastructure players missed in the past, and I think this is what IBM saw with bringing us in as well. It's all about the application. I said earlier that we said every company was a software company. It's true, and so that means that companies are running their businesses on these applications. So it's all about the app, and I think a lot of infrastructure companies miss that. And so with hybrid now, you have that ability to run the app wherever it makes the most sense for a whole host of reasons. And so now comes the complexity of all of that. I think IBM, with bringing us in, saw that hybrid was maybe as big, if not a bigger opportunity than cloud itself, because of the complexity it's going to bring, the power it's going to bring, but also the complexity it's going to bring. I see that's why you see Arvind sort of doubling down the entire IBM company on hybrid. There's services that are going to be really important here that they provide. There's applications on top that are going to be really important, but that have to be architected in such a way that they can run in a hybrid environment. And then finally, there's all the infrastructure and tools and development pieces that we bring to the table. So yeah, I think Arvind really understood that as they made the decision to bring Red Hat in.
I talk to Accenture all the time, and they also have this kind of concept of refactoring and reprogramming your business. It's a holistic view. This is kind of what's happening. So my final question for you is, as that becomes software enabled and programmed, if you will, with applications, the business, with many different subsystems in there, a lot of companies now looking at the light at the end of the tunnel with the pandemic, and they're seeing vaccines coming out. Some say vaccines will be pretty much everywhere, everyone over 12 by the fall. So we're back to real life. There's going to be a pullback of some projects and doubling down on others, as you mentioned what Arvind's doing, so you're starting to see hybrid. As companies come out of the pandemic, they're all jockeying to make sure that they've either done their work to refactor or reposition, reprogram their business, and be set up for net new opportunities. What do you see as a growth model or growth opportunities for companies who want to come out with a growth strategy out of the gate of the pandemic? What's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think you have to plan for, companies have to plan for your workforce to be anywhere. But in order to be anywhere and to be productive, you need services like we're on right now, for example. But you need the infrastructure to be able to do that. You need a way for your customers. If you buy the fact that every company is a software company and you're running the business through their applications, you need a way for your customers to be able to interact with you anywhere, from where they are, anywhere, in a real-time way. And so I think that's why, from our perspective, things like that we're pushing a lot on the edge. Now, that's why you're seeing the hybrid cloud move all the way out into the edge. And you can see it in every vertical. In the telco space, the edge means you have data and compute that needs to be done on the cell tower. In the manufacturing world, you have this data and compute that needs to be done on the factory floor. In the retail vertical, we see the edge really being significant in all these verticals. But that edge is now extends that hybrid data center that we've been talking so much about. So even though you have all these edge devices way out there on the edge, it's a critical part of the business. So you have your developers need to be able to develop for it. You need to secure it. You need to operate it and manage it. So now, in a very short period of time, hybrid's taken on another dimension, bringing you out to all these points on the edge, which is the same but slightly different in every vertical. Now comes complexity. And that's why automation is so important, because with that power comes complexity, but it's going to take automation to keep it all running.
Paul, great insight. Thanks for coming on theCUBE. Open innovation out in the open with you guys again, continuing and the focus of the evolution of software in the cloud with enterprise IT. Clearly a lot of innovation and your contribution to academia and the mass open cloud and all the open cloud initiatives, phenomenal. World's going open source and continues, doesn't stop. The operating system of business is coming, and you guys are well positioned. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks again, John. Always a pleasure.
Okay, Paul Cormier, President and CEO of Red Hat here on theCUBE. I'm John Furrier, your host. Thanks for watching. Hello, welcome back to theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 2021 virtual. I'm John Furrier, your host of theCUBE. We're here with Roberto Calandrini, Head of Architecture and Digital and AI Services from Snam. He's remoting in from Milan, Italy. Roberto, great to see you. Thanks for joining us on theCUBE.
Great to see you too, John. Thanks for having me here.
Love the virtual events. We can bring people in from all around the world. I love the virtual. I mean, it's one of the trade-offs of not being in person is we can still get you in. Thanks for coming on. Before we get started, I want to dig into the digital architecture of what you guys are doing. It's very compelling in a hybrid cloud. You got all the things going on, which I like. But before we start, can you provide a short overview of Snam? Who are your customers? What is your company's focus? And what's your role there?
Sure. So Snam is one of the world's leading energy infrastructure operators. And we basically build energy infrastructures and offer integrated services. Our mission is to guide the evolution of the energy sector and lead the energy transition to a low carbon future. And as you can see in our last investment plan, we declared our net zero carbon objective to be reached by 2040. This is why we basically are investing a lot in technology, in renovating our technology stack in order to provide our business line with the most innovative, sustainable energy network, thanks to which we are already guaranteeing stable supplies to Europe of natural gas.
Love your title. Love the fact you got the AI piece in there. What about specifically is your role? What do you oversee?
I'm responsible for architecture, digital, and artificial intelligence services. That basically means that I'm with my team and my extended team of the digital technology department are designing the entire technology stack for Snam. And I'm specifically focusing more on developing intelligent and usable services for our business lines.
Awesome. You guys over there at Snam have transformed a lot, the stack, that's cool, I want to get into that. You redesign your applications map, right? So it's really edge to cloud now, edge up to the cloud. What were the business drivers and the objectives to reach that goal? I mean, because that's really a great use case. I mean, you've got the edge to deal with intelligent, you got industrial. What were the business drivers and objectives?
Yeah. Our main business drivers has always been to increase the effectiveness of our processes and business lines, so to better support the decision of our internal line of business. And we soon discovered that we needed more data in order to do that, and we structured a very extensive IoT program. But those data provide information about the internal state of our assets, because they're coming from the census. And we thought, what about the environment in which our assets are located? So following up on that, we integrated data coming from remote sensing technologies. So think about drones and satellites imagery data. And we soon discovered that we needed a platform in order to process this new level of data. This way, we think we will be able to handle the new volume of data that we predicted will be 100 times what we currently manage, and efficiently use AI and machine learning to derive insight from this new scale and complexity. So we're talking about big data.
Roberto, I got to ask you, could you take a minute to describe your transformation journey you guys went through and how Red Hat helped you guys execute the digital transformation?
Yeah, we basically started working in 2018 with Red Hat to set up our cloud readiness map. We basically needed to decide what to scale, what to lift and shift, what to refactor in order to move our application to a modern architectural stack. And Red Hat helped us with this. We use OpenShift for our container orchestration platform. And from this, we're developing our new application map. Then in 2019, we decided to accelerate the moving of our application workload. We started moving 10 to 20% of our workloads on OpenShift. And since then, most of our new software projects in Snam are cloud native and developed on OpenShift. We're still in the process of leveraging modern architectures, so microservices based, and using our container orchestration platform and other software as a service platform in order to complete the modernization of our application map. And we're targeting 2023, 2024 to complete the entire process, but as you know, is an ever-changing landscape. So you basically never complete such a task in some way.
Do you see Red Hat technology helping Snam in its ecosystem for energy efficiency and aiming for low carbon emissions?
Well, I think that OpenShift provide us with the right level of flexibility and agility to move at the speed of our new businesses. That's one way to look at the question. The other one, I think it would be in terms of energy efficiency and the carbon footprint that our application workloads generate. And I think that in that respect, it could happen on the mid to long term, probably. So it will, in proportion to the workloads, we will be able to refactor as purely reactive, so as non-blocking apps. This paradigm, in fact, for the same business service, could improve the effective resource consumption, so indirectly saving energy and CO2.
You know, I love this conversation. I know you're in Italy. I wish we could be in person, but I'm glad to get you on because you guys are kind of an example of the main theme at the conference this year, which is an edge, intelligent edge and IoT. But IoT's been around for a while, and we've talked about it before, but now with the cloud and connecting to the cloud, that's a huge topic here at Red Hat Summit 2021. You guys are well versed on what they call OT technology, operational technologies. And what's interesting is Kubernetes and containerized orchestration all help operations people. So you have this OT, IT integration where the operational technology, old school technology people and the stack and the people and the disciplines are meeting the old IT and creating a new thing. So I have to ask you, what's that world like? What are some of the use cases that you're working on and you're planning to deploy?
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly like that. Snam has a long OT history, as you said. So right now we have a complex brownfield situation for our edges and gateways on the field. There are various technical components that resides on the field. You must consider that the Italian network, the Italian transportation network has more than 34,000 kilometers of pipeline and differently sized plants across the country. So we have already several use cases currently running on our data centers that could benefit, we think, from distributed processing at the edge. Think about, for example, physical security. So just to give you an example, privacy preserving local video processing for anomaly detection done at the edge. It's much more effective, in our opinion, for hierarchical processing for data-intensive tasks that involves field data, so that you can process the data coming from the field at different level and take to the central data center only what's needed. And we're also working on the usual problem there is with OT, with operational technology, that is standardization. So we have many heterogeneous components and communication protocol there. And without a proper IoT stack, gathering and normalizing the data for higher level processing could become cumbersome. So security is also a relevant topic, because it is usually preserved at the physical and network layer. And we think that we can introduce with IoT three main improvements about this. We're expanding the level of cybersec to the full technology stack, bringing modern internet security standard to the edge. We're pushing containerization to the edge, being able to orchestrate our workloads from data centers to the cloud. And we think that this will provide us with a high level of flexibility and a better exploitation of the geographical distribution of our data. And last but not least, we are standardizing our gateways and edges. And this will help us streamline the messy data transfer, conversion, and normalization of the data we will receive from the field.
Awesome. I gotta ask, first of all, great job on the edge. I think that's a great vision. Obviously, building in security is important. Having that edge intelligent is really well done. Congratulations. Love the vision. I got to ask you, what's your future plans for Snam's technology journey as a whole? What's your vision? What's your next step?
So, well, what we would like to focus on in the coming years is a cloud environment we currently set up. So right now we have an hybrid cloud environment with a data center and one cloud tenant, and having our workloads running on OpenShift would make easier for us to leverage the offering of different cloud providers, and of course to best exploit what we currently have on our tenants. Second one is find the best way to leverage IoT. So as I said before, our focus in the coming years will be to complete our IoT foundation, rolling out our edges, our gateways, and put our new unified acquisition system to work. And this will provide the computational backbone of our intelligent gas network. And finally, and this is a last objective that will be built on top of the other two. We must find different ways and explore different ways to leverage data and artificial intelligence. So we need to exploit our data in order to generate insight for our business lines. And due to the scale of our new data streams, artificial intelligence and machine learning, we think, will be ubiquitous in our applications. Right now, we're already using it, but not at the scale that the new data streams will need. And most of the algorithms are working on data that are acquired from legacy system and SCADA system. So they are specifically created for each project. We are about to begin an exciting data journey where everything will reside on a unified data platform, and our data scientists, our data analysts in the business lines will be able to derive value from them.
Awesome. You guys are a great customer use case. I love the real operational impact. I talk with a lot of other practitioners and end user enterprises, and I get the same question, and I go the statement. They say, obviously, security needs to be built in, but the challenge is, and what they want to do, and I want to get your thoughts on this if you don't mind commenting. They all say, I want to run cloud native applications from my data center to the cloud, and then out to the edge, and as a distributed platform, one operation set, whether it's OT, IT. I want to make that's my end game in the short term. I want to get there fast. So I got to ask you, for those people that want that, is OpenShift a good solution for that, in your opinion?
We of course think it is. It is part of our IoT foundation. Is not the only technology component, but is one of the most relevant, and it is absolutely helping us in enabling the possibility of orchestrating workloads from the cloud to the edge, and we will be able to give you more information about that as soon as we will release the first distributed workloads within 2021. So I'll be happy to answer any questions from our peers or other colleagues from other industries.
You guys have thousands and thousands of sites. This is classic industrial edge implementation. Honestly, just monitoring the pipes. I mean, you got monitoring the system just physically. I mean, this is like just a physical thing. So now as you have technology, you guys have to monitor and get that early detection of any gas leaks. This is critical to your business. How is that changing? How is that environment changing with technology? Is it more automated? What's your vision? How are you guys looking at that?
Well, we surely are trying to move along two main drivers. The first is unification and standardization of how we monitor all these distributed technology stack. This is very important because even for the simplest use case, you're now dealing with distributed application, and this is an entirely different game to what we are used to, basically. And the other relevant thing is how can we get the best from the machines we put on the field. So in other terms, how can we standardize how we connect to the machines we have on the field, and how much intelligence we need to put there, and how to test it. And in order to do that, we're thinking about building a digital twin of our assets that will enable us to be able to test end-to-end before getting to the real thing on field. How will it work? What are the security vulnerability, potential security vulnerability, and other aspects of the technology infrastructure and the data infrastructure. And we think this is very important because in some way, in order to provide the acceleration and the scale that we are going to provide to our company, we need to be sure well in advance that what we designed will work in practice without getting to the field. We would like to get into the field where everything is already tested.
Roberto, great to have you on theCUBE. Great to see you. Thanks for coming in from Milan, Italy. CUBE Virtual is one of the benefits, and hope to see you in person soon at the next event. But great use case, love your environment, love how you're looking at that platform as a distributed platform and bringing that OT, IT together, data center to the cloud, to the edge. That's a really relevant use case and architecture, so congratulations.
Thank you very much, John, and I hope to see you too very soon, live. Hopefully.
When I'm in Italy, we're going to come by and do a site visit and see each other. Thanks for coming on, appreciate it, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, CUBE coverage for Red Hat Summit 2021. I'm John Furrier, your host. Thanks for watching. Everyone, welcome back to theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 2021. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We got a great segment here on how Red Hat is working with telcos and the disruption in the telco cloud. We got a great guest, CUBE alumni, Daryl Jordan-Smith, Senior Vice President of Industries and Global Accounts at Red Hat. Daryl, great to see you. Thanks for coming back on theCUBE.
Oh, it's great to be here, and I'm really excited about having the opportunity to talk to you today.
Yeah, we're not in person. In real life's coming back soon, although I hear Mobile World Congress might be in person this year, looking like it's good. A lot of people are going to be virtual and activating. I know a lot to talk about. This is probably one of the most important topics in the industry, because when you talk about telco industry, you're really talking about the edge. You're talking about 5G, you're talking about industrial benefits for business, because it's not just edge for connectivity, access. We're talking about Internet of Things, from self-driving cars to business benefits. It's not just consumer, it's really bringing that together. You guys are really leading with the cloud native platform, from RHEL, OpenShift managed services, everything about the cloud native underpinnings. You guys have been successful as a company, but now in your area, telco is being disrupted. You're leading the way. Give us your take on this. This is super exciting.
Well, it's actually one of the most exciting times. I've been in the industry for 30 years. I'm probably aging myself now, but in the telecommunications industry, this for me is the most exciting. It's where, technology is actually going to visibly change the way that everyone interacts with the network. And with the applications that are being developed out there on our platform, and as you mentioned, IoT and a number of the other AI and ML innovations that are occurring in the marketplace, we're going to see a new wave of applications and innovation.
What's the key delivery workloads you're seeing with 5G environment? Obviously, it's not just 5G in the sense of thinking about mobile phones or mobile computers as they are now. It's not just that consumer, hey, surf the web and check your email and get an app and download and communicate. It's bigger than that now. Can you tell us where you see the workloads coming in on the 5G environment?
You hit the nail on the head. The killer application isn't the user or the consumer in the way that we traditionally have known it, because you might be able to download a video and that might take 20 seconds less, but you're not going to pay an awful lot more money for that. The real opportunity around 5G is the industrial applications, things like connected car, automotive driving, factory floor automation, how you actually interface digitally with your bank. How we're doing all sorts of things more intelligently at the edge of the network using artificial intelligence and machine learning. So all of those things are going to deliver a new experience for everyone that interacts with the network, and the telcos are at the heart of it.
I want to get into the real kind of underpinnings of what's going on with the innovations happening. You just kind of laid out kind of the implications of the use cases and the target application workloads. But there's kind of two big things going on with the edge and 5G. One is under the hood networking, what's going on with the moving the packets around, the workload throughput, bandwidth, et cetera, and all that goes on under the hood. And then there's the domain expertise in the data, where AI and machine learning have to kind of weave in. So let's take the first part first. OpenShift is out there, Red Hat's got a lot of products, but you have to nail the networking requirements in cloud native with containerization, because at large scale, it's not just packets, it's all kinds of things going on. Security, managing compute at the edge. There's a lot of things under the hood, if you will, from a networking perspective. Could you share what Red Hat's doing in that area?
Sure. So when we last spoke with theCUBE, we talked a lot about VMs and actually people moving.
Daryl, can I pause you really quickly? I'm really sorry. Keep your answer in mind. We're going to go right from that question. We're just getting, is anything that you're using or touching running into the desk? We're just getting a little bit of shakiness on your camera, and I don't want to. So any way that...
It's probably my elbows as I move.
No worries. So no worries. Okay, so take your answer. I'll give you like a little 3, 2, 1 from behind the scenes, and we'll go right as if John just asked the question. So we're going to stay running.
It's not live, thank God.
Can you ask the question just again, so it's in front of my mind? So.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, let's do it from that. So, Daryl, we'll stay on your shot, so you'll hear John, but it'll be as if he just asked the question. So, John, tee him up.
Yeah. So
here we go.
I'm just going to just nudge him here, just so keep my other question on the edit.
On your nudge. Here we go.
Okay. Here we go. So, Daryl, OpenShift is optimized for networking requirements for cloud native. It's obviously complex under the hood. What is Red Hat doing under the hood to help in the edge and large complex networks for large scale?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, in that we've been building on our experience with OpenStack. And the last time I was on theCUBE, I talked about people virtualizing network applications and network services. we're taking a lot of that knowledge that we've learned from OpenStack and we're bringing that into the container-based world. So we're looking at how we accelerate packets. We're looking at how we build cloud-native applications on bare metal in order to drive that level of performance. We're looking at actually how we do the certification around these applications and services, because they may be sitting in different applets across the cloud, and in some instances running on multiple clouds at the same time. So we're building on our experience from OpenStack. We're bringing all of that into OpenShift, our container-based environment, with all of the tooling necessary to make that effective.
It's interesting with all the automation going on, certainly with the edge developing nicely the way you're describing it, certainly disrupting the telco cloud. You have an operator mindset, a cloud native operator thinking kind of, I mean, it's distributed computing, we know that, but it's hybrid. So it's essentially cloud operations. So there's an operator mindset here that's just different. Could you just share quickly, before we move on to the next segment, what's different about this operating model for these new kinds of operators? As you guys have been saying, the CIO is the new cloud operator. That's the skill set they have to be thinking. And certainly IT to anyone else provisioning and managing infrastructure has to think like an operator. What's your view?
Exactly. Yeah, they certainly do need to think like an operator. They need to look at how they automate a lot of these functions, because they're actually deployed in many different places all at the same time. They have to live independently of each other. That's what cloud native actually really is. So the whole notion of 5 nines and vertically orientated stacks of 5 nines availability, that's kind of going out the window. We're looking at application availability across a hybrid cloud environment and making sure the application can live and sustain itself. So operators as part of OpenShift is one element of that. Operations in terms of management and orchestration and all the tooling that we actually also provide as Red Hat, but also in conjunction with a big partner ecosystem, such as companies like Netcracker, for example, or IBM as another example, or Ericsson, bringing their automation tool sets and their orchestration tool sets to that whole equation to address exactly that problem.
Yeah, you bring up the ecosystem, and this is really an interesting point. I want to just hit on that real quick, because it reminds me of the days when we had this massive innovation wave in the 90s during that era. The client server movement really was about multi-vendor, right? And that you're starting to see that now. And where this ties into here, I think, is, and I want to get your reaction to this, is that, you know, moving to the cloud was all about 2015. Move to the cloud, cloud native. Now it's all about not only being agile and better performance, but you're going to have smaller footprints with more security requirements, more enterprise requirements. This is now, it's more complicated. So you have to kind of make the complications go away. And now you have more people in the ecosystem filling in these white spaces. So you have to be performant and purpose-built, if you will. I hate to use that word, but or at least performant and agile, smaller footprint, greater security, enabling other people to participate. That's a requirement. Can you share your reaction to that?
Well, that's core of what we do at Red Hat. I mean, we take open source community software into a hardened distribution fit for the telecommunications marketplace. So we're very adept to working with communities and third parties. That ecosystem is really important to us. We're investing hundreds of engineers, literally hundreds of engineers, working with our ecosystem partners to make sure that their application and service is certified running on our platform, but also importantly, is certified to be running in conjunction with other cloud native applications that sit over the same cloud. So that is not trivial to achieve in any stretch of the imagination. And a lot of IT technology skills come to bear. And as you mentioned earlier, a lot of networking skills, things that we've learned and we've built with a lot of these traditional vendors as we bring that to the marketplace.
You know, I've been saying on theCUBE, I think 5 years ago I started talking about this, and it was kind of a loose formulation. I want to get your reaction because you brought up ecosystem. You know, I was saying, you know, you're going to see the big clouds develop, obviously Amazon, you know, Microsoft came in after, and now Google and others. And then I said, there's going to be a huge wave of what I call secondary clouds. And you see companies like Snowflake building on top of Amazon. And so you're starting to see the power law of new cloud service providers emerging that can either sit and work with across multiple clouds, either one cloud or others. That's now multi-cloud and hybrid. But this rise of the new, more CSPs, more cloud service providers, this is a huge part of your area right now, because some call that telco cloud, edge hits that. What is Red Hat doing in this cloud service provider market specifically? How do you help them? If I'm a cloud service provider, what do I get in working with Red Hat? How do I be successful Because it's very easy to be a cloud service provider now more than ever. What do I do? How do you help me?
Well, we offer a platform called OpenShift, which is our containerized based platform, but it's not just a container. It involves huge amounts of tooling associated with operating it, developing it around it. So the concept that we have is that you can bring those applications, develop them once on one single platform and run it on premise. You can run it natively as a service in Microsoft's environment. You can actually run it natively as a service in Amazon's environment. You can run it natively in IBM's environment. You can build an application once and run it in all of them, depending on what you want to achieve and who actually provides you the best zoning, the best terms and conditions, the best tooling in terms of other services such as AI associated with that. So it's all about developing it once, but deploying it in many, many different locations, leveraging the largest possible developer ecosystem to drive innovation through applications on that common platform. So
the assumption there is that's going to drive down costs. Can you really talk about why the benefits, the economics are there? Talk about the economics.
Yeah, so it does drive down costs, and that's an important aspect. But more importantly, it drives up agility. So time to market advantage is actually attainable for you. So many of the telcos, when they deploy a network service traditionally, it would take them literally maybe a year to roll it all out. They have to do it in days. They have to do updates in real time in day two operations in literally minutes. So we're building the fabric necessary in order to enable those applications and services to occur. And as you move into the edge of the network and you look at things like private 5G networks, service providers or telcos in this instance will be able to deliver services all the way out to the edge into that private 5G environment and operate that in conjunction with those enterprise clients.
So OpenShift allows me, if I get this right, from a CSP to have a horizontally scalable organization, okay, from a unification platform standpoint, okay, whether it's 5G and other functions.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so you got that. Now I want to come in and bring in the top of the stack or the other element that's been a big conversation here at Red Hat Summit and in the industry. And that is AI and the use of data. One of the things that's emerging is the ability to have both the horizontal scale as well as the specialism of the data and have that domain expertise. You're in the industries for Red Hat. This is important because you're going to have one industry is going to have different jargon, different language, different data, different KPIs. So you got to have that domain expertise to enable the ability to write the apps and also enable AI. Yeah. Could you comment on how that works and what Red Hat's doing there?
So we're developing OpenShift and a number of other of our technologies to be fit for the edge of the network, where a lot of these AI applications will reside because you want them at closer to the client or the application itself where it needs to reside. We're creating that edge fabric, if you like. The next generation of hybrid cloud is really going to be, in my view, at the edge. We're enabling a lot of the service providers to go after that, but we're also igniting by industry. You mentioned different industries. So if I look at, for example, manufacturing with MindSphere, we recently announced with Siemens how they do at the edge of the network, factory automation, collecting telemetry, doing real-time data and analytics, looking at materials going through the factory floor in order to get a better quality result with lower levels of that system. It's just one industry, and they have their own private and favorite AI platforms and data sets they want to work with their own data scientists who understand that ecosystem inherently. You can move that to healthcare, and you can imagine, how you actually interface with your healthcare professionals here in North America, but also around the world, how those applications and services and what the AI needs to do in terms of understanding X-rays and looking at, common errors associated with different X-rays, so a practitioner can make a more specific diagnosis faster, saving money and potentially lives as well. So different vertical markets in this space have different AI and ML requirements and needs, different data sciences, different data models. And what we're seeing is an ecosystem of companies that are starting up there in that space. We have Watson that's part of IBM, but you have Perceptor Labs, you have H2O, and a number of other very, very important AI-based companies in that ecosystem.
Yeah, and you get the horizontal scalability of the control plane and in the platform, if you will, that gives you that cross-organizational leverage and enable that vertical domain expertise.
Exactly, and you want to build an AI application that might run on a factory floor for certain reasons due to its location and what they're actually physically building. You might want to run that on premise. You might actually want to put it into IBM Cloud or into Azure or into AWS. You develop it once to OpenShift, you can deploy it in all of those as a service sitting natively in those environments.
Daryl, great chat. You got a lot going on. Telco cloud, there's a lot of cloud native disruption going on. It's a challenge and an opportunity, and some people have to be on the right side of history on this one if they're going to get it right. We'll know, and the scoreboard will be very clear because this is a shift. It's a shift. So again, you hit all the key points that I wanted to get out, but I wanted to ask you two more areas that are hot here at Red Hat Summit 21 as well, again, as well in the industry. I want to get your reaction and thoughts on, and they are DevSecOps and automation. Okay, two areas everyone's talking about. DevOps, which we know is infrastructure as code, programmability, under the hood, modern application development, all good. Yeah, the second there, security, DevSecOps, that's critical. Automation is continuing to be the benefits of cloud native. So DevSecOps and automation, what's your take and how does it impact the telco world and your world?
You can't operate a network without having security in place. You're talking about very sensitive data. You're talking about applications that could be real-time critical, and this is actually even life-saving or life-threatening if you don't get them right. So the acquisition that Red Hat recently made around StackRox really helps us make that next level of transition into that space. And we're looking about how we go about securing containers in a cloud-native environment. As you can imagine, there'll be many, many thousands, tens of thousands of containers running. If one is actually misbehaving, for want of a better term, that creates a security risk and a security loophole. We're shoring that up. That's important for the deployment of OpenShift in the telco domain and other domains. In terms of automation, if you can't do it at scale, and if you look at 5G and you look at the radios at the edge of the network and how you're going to provision those services, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of nodes, hundreds of thousands. So you have to automate a lot of those processes. Otherwise, you can't scale to meet the opportunity. You can't physically deploy.
You know, Daryl, this is a great conversation. You know, as a student of history, and Dave Vellante and I always kind of joke about that, and you've been around the industry for a long time. Telcos have been balancing this evolution of digital business for many, many decades. And now with cloud native, it's finally a time where you're starting to see that it's just the same game now, new infrastructure. You know, video, voice, text, data, all now happening, all transformed and going digital all the way, all aspects of it. In your opinion, how should telcos be thinking about as they put their plans in place for next generation? Because you know, the world is now cloud native. There's a huge surface area of opportunities, different ecosystem relationships, the power dynamics are shifting. It's really a time where there will be winners and there will be losers. What's your view on how the telco industry needs to cloudify and how to be positioned for success?
So one of the things I truly believe very deeply that the telcos need to create a platform, a horizontal platform that attracts developer and ecosystems to their platform, because innovation is going to sit elsewhere. Then, you know, there might be a killer application that one telco might create, but in reality, most of those innovations, most of those disruptors are going to occur from outside of that telco company. So you want to create an environment where you're easy to engage and you've got maximum sets of tools and versatility and agility in order to attract that innovation. If you attract the innovation, you're going to ignite the business opportunity that 5G and 6G and beyond is going to actually provide you, or enable your business to drive. And you've really got to unlock that innovation. And you can only unlock, in our view at Red Hat, innovation if you're open. You know, you follow open standards, you're using open systems, and open source is a method or a tool that you guys, or if you're a telco, I would ask, you guys need to leverage and harness.
Yeah, and there's a lot of upside there if you get that right.
Yes.
There's plenty of upside, a lot of leverage, a lot of assets to take advantage. The whole offline, online coming back together. We are living in a hybrid world, certainly with the pandemic. We've seen what that means. It's put a spotlight on critical infrastructure and the critical shifts. If you had to kind of get pinned down, Daryl, how would you describe that learnings from the pandemic as folks start to come out of the pandemic? There is a light at the end of the tunnel. As we come out of this pandemic, companies want a growth strategy, want to be positioned for success. What's your learning coming out of the pandemic?
So from my perspective, which really kind of, in one respect was very admirable, but and another respect is actually deeply a lot of gratitude, is the fact that the telecommunications companies, because of their carrier grade capabilities and their operational prowess, were able to keep their networks up and running, and they had to move significant capacity from major cities to rural areas because everyone was working from home. And in many different countries around the world, they did that extremely well. And their networks held up. I don't know, and maybe someone will correct me and email me, but I don't know one telco had a huge network outage through this pandemic. And that kept us connected, it kept us working. And it also, what I also learned is that in certain countries, particularly LATAM, where they have a very large prepaid market, they were worried that the prepaid market in the pandemic would go down because they felt that people would have enough money to spend and therefore they wouldn't top up their phones as much. The opposite effect occurred. They saw prepaid grow. And that really taught me that connectivity is critical in times of stress that everyone's going through. So I think there were some key learnings there.
Yeah, and I think you're right on the money there. It's like they pulled the curtain back of all the FUD and said, you know, necessity is the mother of invention. And when you look at what happened and what had to happen to survive in the pandemic and be functional, you nailed it. The network stability, the resilience, but also the new capabilities that were needed had to be delivered in an agile way. And I think, you know, it's pretty much a forcing function for all the projects that are on the table to know which ones to double down on. So I think you pretty much nailed it.
Thank you.
Daryl Jordan-Smith, Senior Vice President of Industries and Global Accounts for Red Hat CUBE alumni. Daryl, thanks for that insight. Thanks for sharing. Great conversation around telcos and telco clouds and all the edge opportunities. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, John.
Okay, it's theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 21. I'm John Furrier, your host. Thanks for watching. Okay, welcome back everyone to theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 2021 virtual. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. Got two great guests here from AWS, Bob Wise, General Manager of Kubernetes for Amazon Web Services, and Peter Ulander, Head of Product Marketing for the Enterprise Developer and Open Source at AWS. Gentlemen, you guys are the core leaders in the AWS open source initiatives. Thanks for joining on theCUBE here for Red Hat Summit.
Thanks for having us, John.
Yeah, good to be here.
So, you know, the innovation that's come from people building on top of the cloud has just been amazing. And, you know, you guys, props to Amazon Web Services for constantly adding more and raising the bar on more services every year. You guys do that. And now public cloud has become so popular and so important that now hybrid has pushed the edge. You got Outposts with Amazon, you see everyone following suit. It's pretty much a clear vote of confidence from the customers that hybrid is the operating model of the future. And that really is about the edge, right? So want to chat with you about the open source intersection there. So let's get into it. So we're here at Red Hat Summit. So Red Hat's open source company, and timing's great for them, now part of IBM. You guys have had a relationship with Red Hat for some time. Can you tell us about the partnership and how it's working together?
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't I take that one? AWS and Red Hat have been strategic partners since, I think it's 2008 or so. In the early days of AWS, when engaging with customers, we wanted to ensure that AWS was the best place for enterprises to run their Red Hat workloads. And this is super important when you think about what Red Hat has accomplished with RHEL in the enterprise. It's running SAP, it's running Oracle's, it's running all different types of core business applications, as well as a lot of the new things that customers are innovating in. So having that relationship to ensure that not only did it work on AWS, but it actually scaled. We had integration of services. We had, the performance, the price, all of the things that were so critical to customers was critical from day one. And we continue to evolve this relationship over time, as you see us coming into Red Hat Summit this year.
Well, to get into the hard news here, also the new service, Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS, known as ROSA, the A for Amazon, Red Hat OpenShift, A for Amazon Web Services, clever acronym, but really it's on AWS. What exactly is this service? What does it do, and who is it designed for?
Well, let me jump in on this one. Maybe let's start with the why. Why ROSA? Customers love using OpenShift, but they also want to use AWS. They want the best of both. So they want their peanut butter and their chocolate together in a single confection. And a lot of those customers have deployed AWS, have deployed OpenShift on AWS. They want managed service, simplified supply chain. They want to be able to streamline moving on-premises OpenShift workloads to AWS, and naturally want good integration with AWS services. So as to the what, it's our new service, jointly operated and supported by Red Hat and AWS to provide a fully managed OpenShift on AWS. So again, like a lot of customers have been running OpenShift on AWS before this time, but of course they were managing it themselves typically. And so now they get a fully managed option with also simplified supply chain. So single support channel, single billing.
We were talking before we came on camera about the acronym on AWS, and people build on the cloud. It's kind of like it's no big deal to say that, but I know it means something. I want to explain, you guys to explain this on, because I know I've been scolded for saying things on theCUBE that were kind of misspoken, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, I built that app. We built all the stuff on theCUBE is on AWS, but it's not on AWS. It means something from a designation standpoint. What does on AWS mean? Because this is OpenShift service on AWS. We see this other companies have their products on AWS. This is specific designation. Can you share, please?
Yep. John, when you see the branding of something like Red Hat on AWS, what that basically signals to our customers is that this is joint engineering work. This is the top of the strategic partners, where we actually do a lot of joint engineering and work to make sure that we're driving the right integrations and the right experience. Make sure that these things are accessible and discoverable in our console. They're treated effectively as a first-class service inside of the AWS ecosystem. So there's not many of the ons, if you will. You think about SAP on VMware Cloud on AWS, and now Red Hat OpenShift on AWS. It really is that signal that helps give customers the confidence of tested, tried, true, supported, and validated service on top of AWS. And we think that's significantly better than anything else. It's easy to run an image on a VM and stuff it into a cloud service to make it available. But customers want better. Customers want tighter experiences. They want to be able to take advantage of all the great things that we have from a scale, availability, and performance perspective. And that's really what we're pushing towards.
Yeah, I've seen examples specifically where when partners work with Amazon at that level of joint engineering, deeper partnerships, the results are pretty significant on the business side. So congratulations to you guys working with OpenShift and Red Hat. It's a real testament to their product. But I got to ask you guys, pull the Amazon playbook out and challenge you guys, or just create some commentary around the process of working backwards. Every time I talk to Andy Chassis, he always says, we work backwards from the customer and we get the requirements and we're listening to customers. Okay, great. He loves that. He loves to say that. It's true. I know that, but I've seen that at AWS. What does the customer work backwards document look like here? What was the need and what made this become such an important part of AWS? And then what are they saying now that the product's out there?
Well, OpenShift has a very wide footprint, as does AWS, and some working backwards documents kind of write themselves because the customer demand is so strong that there's just no avoiding it. And then it really just becomes about making sure you have a good plan, so it becomes much more operational at that point. And ROSA is definitely one of those services. We had so much demand, and it's as a result. No surprise that we're getting a lot of enthusiasm for customers because so many of them asked us for it.
What's the response been so far? What's been the reaction? I'm asking demand. That's I kind of got the sense of that. But okay, so there's demand. Now what? What's the use cases? What are customers saying? What's the reaction been?
A lot of the use cases are these hybrid kind of use cases where customer has a big OpenShift footprint. What we see from a lot of these customers is a strong demand for consistency. In order to reduce IT sprawl, what they really want to do is have the smallest number of simplest environments they can. And so customers that standardize on OpenShift really want to be able to standardize OpenShift both in their on-premises environment and on AWS, and get managed service options just to remove the undifferentiated heavy lifting.
Peter, what's your take on the product marketing side of this, where you got open source becoming very enterprise specific, and Red Hat's been there for a very long time. I've been user of Red Hat since the beginning and following them, and Linux obviously is Linux, where that's come from. But what features specifically jump out in this offering that customers are resonating around? What's the vibe here?
And John, you kind of alluded to it early on, which is, I don't know that I'd necessarily call it hybrid, but the reality is our customers have environments that are on premises, in the cloud, and all the way out to the edge. And today, when you think of a lot of solutions and services, it's a fractured experience that they have between those three locations. And one of our biggest commitments to our customers is to make things super simple, remove the complexity, do all of the hard work, which means, customers are looking for a consistent experience, environment, and tooling that spans data center to cloud to edge. And that's probably the biggest kind of core asset here for customers who might have standardized on OpenShift in the data center. As they come to the cloud, they want to continue to leverage those skills. I think probably one of the an interesting one as we headed down in this path, we all know Delta Airlines. Delta is a great example of a joint customer, who have been doing stuff inside of AWS for a long time. They've been standardizing on Red Hat for a long time, and bringing this together just gave them that simple extension to take their investment in Red Hat OpenShift and leverage their experience and again, the scale and performance of what AWS brings them.
Next question, what's next for Red Hat OpenShift on AWS in your work with Red Hat? Where does this go next? What's the big to-do item? What do you guys see as the vision?
I'm glad you mentioned open source collaboration at the start there. One thing to point out is that AWS works on the Kubernetes project upstream, as does the Red Hat team. So one of the ways that we collaborate with the Red Hat team is in open source. One of those projects is a new project called ACK, Amazon Controllers for Kubernetes. And this is a kind of Kubernetes friendly way for customers to use an API to manage AWS services. And so that's one of the things we're looking forward to as that goes GA, rolling out into both ROSA and to our other services.
Awesome. And I got to ask you guys this while you're here, because it's very rare to get two luminaries within AWS on the open source side. This has been a huge build out over the many years for AWS, and some people really kind of don't understand kind of the position. So take a minute to clarify the position of AWS on open source. You guys are very active in the projects you mentioned upstream with Kubernetes, in other areas. I've had many conversations with Adrian Cockcroft on this, as well as others within AWS. Huge proponents. I mean, web services, you go back to the original Amazon. Jeff Barr was saying 15 years ago, some of those APIs are still in play here. APIs back in 15 years ago, that was kind of not, mainstream at that time. So, you had open standards really made Amazon Web Services successful, and you guys are continuing it. But as the modern era is very enterprise-like, and you see a lot of legacy, you're seeing a lot more operations that are going to be driven by open technologies that you guys are investing on. Take a minute to explain what AWS is doing and what you guys care about and your mission.
Yeah, well, why don't I start and then we'll kick it over to Bob, because I think Bob can also talk about some of the key contribution sides. But the best way to think about it is kind of in three different pillars. So let's start with the first one, which is around the fact of ensuring that our customers' favorite open source projects run best on AWS. Since 2006, we've been helping our customers operationalize their open source investments and really kind of achieve that scale and focus more on how they use and innovate on the products versus how they set up and run. And for myself, being in open source since the late 90s, the biggest opportunity yet challenge was the access to the technology, but it still required you as a customer to learn how to set up, configure, operationalize, support, and sustain. AWS removes that heavy lifting. And again, back to that earlier point, from the beginning of AWS, we helped customers scale and implement their Apache services, their database services, all of these different types of open source projects to make them really work exceptionally well on AWS. And back to that point, make sure that AWS was the best place for their open source projects. I think the second thing that we do, and you're seeing that today with what we're doing with ROSA and Red Hat, is we partner with open source leaders from Red Hat to Redis and Confluent to a number of different players out there, Grafana and Prometheus, to even foundations like the LF and the CNCF. We partner with these leaders to ensure that we're working together to grow the overall experience and the overall pie, if you will. And this kind of gets into that point you were making, John, in that the old world legacy proprietary stuff, there's a huge chance for refresh and new opportunity and rethinking or modernization, if you will, as you come into the cloud. Having the expertise and the partnerships with these key players as enterprises move in is so crucial. And then the third piece I like to talk about that's important to our open source strategies is really around contribution. We have a number of projects that we've delivered ourselves. I think the two most recent ones that really come top of mind for me is what we did with Babelfish, as well as with OpenSearch, right? So contributing and driving a true open source project that helps our customers, take advantage of things like an SQL, a proprietary to open source SQL conversion tool, or what we're doing to make Elasticsearch the opportune or the primary open platform for our customers. But it's not just about those services, it's also collaborating with key industry initiatives. And Bob's at the forefront of that with what we're doing with the CNCF around things like Kubernetes and Prometheus, et cetera. Bob, you want to jump in on some of that?
Sure. I think the one thing I would add here is that customers love using these open source projects, but one of the challenges with them frequently is security. And this is job zero at AWS. So a lot of the collaboration work we do, a lot of the work that we do on the upstream projects is kind of specifically around kind of security oriented things, because that is what customers expect when they come to get a managed service at AWS. So some of those efforts are somewhat unsung because you generally do more work and less talk in security-oriented things, but in projects across AWS, that's always a key contribution focus for us.
That's awesome. Good way to call out security too. I think that's being built into everything now. That's on operating model. People call it shift left, day two operations, however you want to look at it. You got this nice formation going between under the hood kind of programmability of the infrastructure at scale, and then you have the modern application development, which is just, again, programmable DevSecOps. It's funny, Bob, I'd love to get your take on this, because I remember in the 80s and during the Unix generation, I used to peddle software under the table, like, hey, here's a copy of Unix, don't tell anyone. People in the younger generation don't get the fact that it wasn't always open. Okay, and so now you have open, and you have this idea of an enterprise that's going to be a system management system view. So you got engineering and you got computer science kind of coming together, this SRE middle layer, you're hearing that as kind of a new discipline. So DevOps kind of has won. I mean, we kind of knew this for many, many years. I said this in 2013 on theCUBE, actually, at reInventing. I just recently shared that clip. But okay, now you got SecOps, DevSecOps. So now you have an era where it's a system thinking. And open source is driving all that. So can you share your perspective, because this is kind of where the puck is going. It's an open to open world. It's going to have to be open and scalable. How does open source and you guys take it to the next level to give that same scale and reliability? What's your vision?
The key here is really around automation, and what we're seeing, you could look at Kubernetes. Kubernetes is essentially a robot. It was like the early design of it was built around robotics principles. So it's a giant software robot, and the world has changed. If you just look at the influx of all kinds of automation to not just the DevOps world, but to all industries, you see a similar kind of trend. And so the world of a IT operations person is changing from doing the work that the robot did and replacing it with a robot to managing large numbers of robots. And in this case, the robots are like a little early and a little hard to talk to. And so, you end up using languages like YAML and other things. But it turns out robots still just do what you tell them to do. And so one of the things you have to do is be really, really careful, because robots will go and do whatever it is you ask them to do. On the other hand, they're really, really good at doing that. So, in the security area, I think the research points to the largest single source of security issues being people making manual mistakes. Yeah. A lot of people are still a little bit terrified if human beings aren't touching things on the way to production. AWS, we're terrified if humans are touching it. And that is a super hard chasm to cross. And open source projects are really playing a big role in what's really a IT-wide migration to a whole new set of not just tools, but organizational approaches.
Peter, what's your reaction to that? Because we're talking essentially software concepts, because if you write bad code, the code will execute what you did, assuming it compiles like in the old days. Now, if you're going to scale large scale operations that has dynamic capabilities, services being initiated and terminating, tear down, started, you need the automation, but if you really don't design it right, you could be screwed. Right. This is a huge deal.
This is one reason why we've put so much effort into GitOps. You can think of it as a more narrowly defined subset of the DevOps world, with a specific set of principles around using kind of simplified declarative approaches, along with robots that converge the desired state, converge the system to the desired state. And when you get into large distributed systems, you end up needing to take those kinds of approaches to get it to work at scale. Otherwise, you have problems.
Yeah, just adding to that, and it's funny you said, DevOps has won. I actually think DevOps has won, but DevOps hasn't changed as cloud move, right? The reality is it was founded back, quite a while ago. It was more around CI/CD in the enterprise and the closed data center. And it was one of those where automation and runbooks addressed the fact that, every pair of hands between service request and service delivery created an issue. So that growth and that mental model of moving from waterfall agile to DevOps, you built it, you run it type of a model, I think is really, really important. But as it comes out into the cloud, you no longer have those controls of the data center, and you actually have infinite scale. So back to your point of you got to get this right. You have to architect correctly. You have to make sure that your code is good. You have to make sure that you have full visibility. This is where it gets really interesting at AWS and some of the things that we're tying in. So whether we're talking about GitOps, like what Bob just went through, or what you brought up with DevSecOps, you also have things like AIOps, right? And so looking at how we take our machine learning tools to really implement the appropriate types of code reviews, to assessing your infrastructure or your choices against well-architected principles and providing automated remediation is key. Yeah. Adding to that is observability. Developers, especially in a highly distributed environment, need to have better understanding, fidelity, and touch points of what's going on with their application as it runs in production. And so what we do with regards to the work we have in observability around Grafana and Prometheus projects only accelerate that whole concept of continuous monitoring and continuous observability. And then kind of, really adding to that, I think it was last month we introduced our fault injection simulator, a chaos engineering tool that again takes advantage of all of this automation and machine learning to really help our developers, our customers, operate at scale, right? And make sure that when they are releasing code, they're releasing code that is not just great in a small sense, it works on my laptop, but it works great in a highly distributed, massively scaled environment around the globe.
This is one of the things that impresses me about Red Hat this year, and I've said this before on other events I've covered with them, is that they get the cloud scale piece, and I think their relationship with you guys shows that. And I think DevOps is one, but it's the gift that keeps giving in open source, because what you have here is no longer a conversation about the cloud, moving to the cloud. It's the cloud has become the operating model, so the conversation shifts to much more complicated enterprise or intelligent edge, and whether it's industrial or human or whatever, you got a data problem. So it's about a programmability issue at scale. So, what's interesting is that Red Hat is on this bandwagon. It's an operating system. I mean, basically it's a distributed computing paradigm. Essentially a la AWS concept as a cloud now goes to the edge. It's just distributed services via an open source. So what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's back to the original point, John, where I said, any CIO is thinking about their IT environment from data center to cloud to edge, and the more consistency, automation, and kind of tools at their disposal to enable them to create that kind of. I think you started to talk about it, infrastructure, the whole as code, infrastructure as code. It's now almost everything is code. And that starts with the operating system, obviously. And that's why this is so critical that we're partnering with companies like Red Hat on our vision and their vision, because they align to where our customers are ultimately going. Bob, you wanna add to that?
No, I think you said it. I think you said it all well.
You guys are crushing it. Bob, one quick question for you while I got you here. You mentioned GitOps. I've heard this before. I kind of understand. Can you just quickly define, from your perspective, what is GitOps?
Sure. Well, GitOps is really taking like I said before, it's a kind of narrowed version of DevOps. Sure, it's infrastructure as code. Sure, you're doing things incrementally. But the GitOps principle, it's back to like, what are the best practices when you're managing large numbers of robots? And in this case, it's around this idea of declarative intent. So instead of having systems that reach into production and change things, what you do is you set up the defined declared state of the system that you want, and then leave the robots to constantly work to converge the state there. That seems kind of nebulous. Let me give you a really concrete example from Kubernetes. By the way, the entire Kubernetes system design is based on this. You say, I want 5 pods running in production, and that's running my application. So what Kubernetes does is it sits there and it constantly checks, I'm supposed to have 5 pods. Do I have 5 pods? Do I have 5 pods? Well, what happens if the machine running one of those pods goes away? Now suddenly it goes and checks and says, I'm supposed to have 5 pods, but there's 4 pods. What action do I take to now try to get the system back to the state? So you don't have a system reaching out and checking externally to Kubernetes. You let Kubernetes do the heavy lifting there, and so it goes through a loop of I need to start a new pod, and then it converges the system state back to running 5 pods. So it's really taking that kind of declarative intent combined with constant convergence loops to fully production at scale.
That's awesome. Well, we do a whole segment on state and stateless future, but we don't have time. I do want to summarize real quick. We're here at the Red Hat Summit 2021. You got Red Hat OpenShift on AWS, the big news. Bob and Peter, tell us quickly in summary, why AWS, why Red Hat, why better together? Give the quick overview. Bob, we'll start with you.
Bob, you want to kick us off?
I'm going to repeat peanut butter and chocolate. The customers love OpenShift. They love managed services. They want simplified operations, simplified supply chain. So you get the best of both worlds. You get the OpenShift that you want, fully managed on AWS, where you get all of the security and scale.
Yeah, I can't add much to that other than saying, Red Hat is a powerhouse, obviously, on data centers. It is the operating system of the data center, and bringing together the best in the cloud with the best in the data center is such a huge benefit to our customers. Because back to your point, John, our customers are thinking about what are they doing from data center to cloud to edge, and bringing the best of those pieces together in a seamless solution is so critical, and that's why AWS.
Guys, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I just want to give you guys a plug for you, and being humble, but work in the CNCF and standards bodies has been well known, and getting the word out. Congratulations for the commitment to open source. Really appreciate the community. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, John.
Okay, CUBE coverage here, covering Red Hat Summit 2021. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 21 virtual. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We've got two great guests here, returning back. CUBE alumni is here to give us their perspective. Dave Lundquist, GM, VP of Engineering, Hybrid Cloud Management at Red Hat. Joe Fitzgerald, General Manager and VP of the Management Business Unit at Red Hat. Guys, welcome back to theCUBE. Congratulations, Red Hat Summit's ongoing virtual. Great to see you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
So love to get the lowdown. A lot going on, the productivity this year, looking back from last year. A lot's been done. We've been in the pandemic now circling back a full year. A lot's happened. A lot of productivity, a lot of clear visibility on what's working, what's not. You guys got some great news. Let's just jump right into it. What's the big announcement?
So one of the things that we announced here at Summit, John, is an expansion of our Red Hat Insights brand. Basically, we announced Red Hat Insights for our RHEL platform back in 2015. Over the years, we've increased the amount of data and visibility into those systems. Here at Summit, we've now announced Red Hat Insights for both OpenShift and for the Red Hat Ansible platform. So it's a pretty significant increase in the visibility that we have to the platforms.
Oh, so can you repeat that one more time? So the expansion is through which platforms now specifically?
So Red Hat Insights is a way that we connect up to different platforms that Red Hat provides. Historically, it was for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or RHEL. We've now expanded it to the Red Hat OpenShift family of platforms, as well as the Red Hat Ansible automation platform as well.
So nice broad expansion. People want that data. What was the motivation behind it? Was it customer demand? Was it more access to the data? Just was it on the roadmap? What's the motivation? Where is this going? What's the purpose of all this?
Well, I don't think customers say, hey, please, take more data. I think it's customers say, can you keep me more secure? Can you keep my systems more optimized? Can you help me set more things to automatic? And that requires that you get data from these systems so that you can auto-tune, auto-secure, auto-optimize, right? So it's really all those benefits that we get by connecting to these systems, bringing in the telemetry, the data, the config, different kinds of information, and using that on the customer behalf to optimize, secure, and tune those systems.
One of the biggest trends I think now for multiple years has been observability. With cloud native, more services are being turned on and off. Enterprises are getting a lot of pressure to be modern in their application development processes. Why is data more important than ever now? Can you guys take a minute and expand on that? Because this idea of telemetry across the platform is a very interesting announcement, because you're turning that data into value. But can you guys expand, where's that value turning into? What is the value proposition? Where are people seeing the key key value points?
Well, a couple of points, John, as you started out, is in a hybrid cloud environment with cloud native applications and a lot of application modernization and the current progressiveness of DevOps and SRE teams, you're seeing a lot of dynamics in workloads and continuous delivery and deployments that are in public environments and private environments, distributed models. And so consequently, there's a lot of change in dynamics in the environment. So to sustain these high levels of service levels, to sustain the security, the compliance, the ability to gather data from all these different points, to be able to get visibility into that data, the ability to process that with various analytics and understand when something's gone wrong or when an update is needed or when a configuration is drifted is increasingly critical in a hybrid cloud environment.
So on the telemetry piece, is that in OpenShift as well? That's supporting that is in there? How does that work?
It's in OpenShift, as Joe mentioned. It's in RHEL. We have feeds from Ansible. In the OpenShift space, we have an offering advanced cluster management that understands fleets of deployments, clusters, wherever they're deployed, however they're running infrastructure, public, private, hybrid environments, and it also collects in the context of the workloads that are deployed on those clusters, the multi-cluster environment.
I want to ask you guys a question. I get this all the time on theCUBE. Hey, I need more data. I have multiple systems. I need to pull that data into one kind of control plane, but I'm being pushed more and more to keep scaling operations. And this becomes a huge question mark for the enterprises because they have to turn up more scale. So this becomes a data problem. Does this solve it here? How do you guys answer that? And what would be your response to that trend?
Well, I think the thirst for data, right? There's a lot of things you can do with more data. There is a point where you can't ship all the data everywhere, right? If you think about logs and metrics and all the data, it's too heavyweight to move everything everywhere, right? So part of it is selecting the kind of data that you're going to get from these systems and the purpose you're going to use it for. And in the case of Red Hat, we take data from these different systems, regardless of where they're deployed, bring it in, and then we do predictive analytics against that data. And we use that telemetry, that config, that health data, right, to do everything from optimize for performance, for security, cost, things like that. But we're not moving, huge quantities of data from every system to Red Hat in order to, pour through it. We are very selectively moving, certain kinds of data for very specific purposes.
Dave, what's your take on that? Because you got to engineer these systems. What's the optimized path for data? Are you keep it in the silo? Do you bring it together? What's the customer's view on how to deal with the data?
Yeah, it's a complex problem, no doubt. You don't want to be pulling all the data and trying to transmit all that data back into your analytics system. So you end up curating some data, some of it you forward on. Often it'll be done under control of policies so that data that is sensitive, that should stay within the environment that it's in will stay. But curated or alerts or information that's particularly relevant, say to configurations, updates, any of that type of information will go up into the analytics, into the insights. And then in turn, the alerts will come back down in a manner that are presented to the users so they understand what actions need to be taken place, whether it's automated actions or they have to get approvals to maybe make an update to a certain environment.
All right, you got telemetry, data, power, the advanced cluster management or ACM. What's the overlap of the visibility and automation here? Can you guys talk about that?
Well, it's a great question, John. And what we like to do is we like to sort of separate the different areas. There's the seeing, right, of what's going on in these environments, right? So getting the data, analyzing it, and determining what needs to be done. And then either the recommendation or the automation, as Dave said, in a lot of environments, there's a process of either approvals or checkpoints or evaluation of the changes being made to the system, right? So separating the data and the analysis from the what do you want to do with this and making that configurable, I think is really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the number one thing is like, everyone always asks, what do you optimize for? Do you optimize for the automation or the visibility? And I think, there's always a trade-off, and that's always an interesting question. David, love to get your thoughts. If someone asks you, hey, I have a team of people, what do I optimize for? The visibility or the automation or both? Is there a rule of thumb or is there a playbook? How would you answer that question?
Well, there's a couple things. First, I think the ability to pull the data together to get visibility across the environment is critical. And then what becomes often complex is how the different disciplines, how the different parts of the system are able to work together on common understanding of the resources, common understanding of the applications. That's usually where systems start falling down, and so it's too siloed. So one of the key things we have with our systems, particularly with OpenShift and RHEL and with ACM and Ansible, is the ability to have a common backplane and the ability to have a common understanding of the resources and the applications. And then you can start integrating the data around those common data models and take appropriate actions on that. So that's how you end up getting the visibility integrated with the automation.
When you think about this, Joe, about the security aspect of it and the edge of the network, which has been a big theme this year and going into next year, a lot more discussion, especially industrial edge, that's important. You got to take all this into account. How would you talk about folks who are thinking about embedding security and thinking about now the distributed edge specifically?
Right. So we thought it was complicated before, right? It goes up a notch here, right? As you have, more and more edge applications. I think at the edge, you're going to want automated policies and automated configurations enforced, so that when a device connects up to a network or is, analyzed, that there's a set of policies and a set of configurations and versions that need to be applied to that device. These devices aren't always connected. There's not always high bandwidth. So you basically want a high degree of automation in that case. And to get back to your early point, there are certain things you can set, like policies about security or configuration. You say, I always want it to be like this. Make it so. And there's other things where they're more, complicated, right, to address or have regulatory requirements or oversight issues. And those things you want to tell somebody, I think this should be done. Is this the right thing to do? Is it okay? Do it. But at the edge, you're going to have a lot more sort of lights out automation to keep these things secured and configured right.
It's funny, I was talking to the Ansible guys, they're talking about, code for code, changing code all the time, and dynamic nature of some of the emerging tech coming out of the Red Hat teams. It's pretty interesting you guys have going on there, but you bring it down to the average enterprise and Main Street enterprise out there, they're looking at, okay, I got some public cloud, now I got hybrid, I'm going 100% hybrid. That's pretty much the general consensus of all the enterprises. Okay, so now you say, okay, if I understand this correctly, you got insights on RHEL, OpenShift, and Ansible platform. So am I set up for an open hybrid cloud? That's the question I want to ask you guys. Does that give me the foundation to allow me to start the cloud adoption in a true distributed open way?
Well, I'll offer to go first. I think there's a couple of things you need in order to run across hybrid clouds. And I think Red Hat, from a platform point of view, the fact that Red Hat platforms run across all those different environments, from the public cloud to on-premise physical invert to edge devices, now you have consistency of those platforms, whether it's your traditional workloads on RHEL, your container-based workloads on OpenShift, or automation that's being driven by Ansible. Those are consistent across all these different hybrid cloud environments, so it reduces the complexity by standardizing those platforms across any and all of those different substrates. Then when you can take the data from those systems, bring them centrally, and use it to manage those things to a higher degree of automation, now you've taken another sort of chunk of complexity out of the problem, right? Consistency of getting data from all those different systems, being able to set policies and enforce things across all those distributed environments is huge.
Yeah, and then it fills in the gaps when you start thinking about the siloed teams. I think one of the messages that I've been hearing out of Red Hat Summit and the industry that's consistent is the unification trend that's going on, unifying development teams in a way that creates more of an exponential value curve rather than just linear progressions in traditional IT. Are you guys seeing that as well? I mean, what's your take on this, that piece of the story?
Well, I think the shift that we've seen for the last few years, actually quite a few years, with DevOps and SRE, has started to bring a lot of the disciplines together that you mentioned that are traditionally silos. And you'll find the effectiveness of that is really around many of the areas that we've been discussing here, which is open platforms that can run consistently across a hybrid environment, the ability to get data and visibility out of those platforms so you can see across the distributed environment, across the hybrid environment, and then the ability to take actions, enforce, or update environments through automation is really what's critical to bring things to bring it all together.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point. Joe, I was talking with Chris Wright around, and we've covered this in the past, Red Hat's success with academics and the young people coming in the universities with computer science. It's not just computer science anymore. Now you have engineering degrees, kind of cross-disciplinary with SREs, as SRE movement, because you're looking at cloud operations at scale. That's not an IT problem anymore. It's actually an IT next-gen problem. And this is kind of there's no real degree, there's no real credential for, large-scale hybrid cloud environments. You guys got the Mass Open Cloud Initiative. I saw that going on. That's some really pretty big things. This is a change in talent. What's your view on this? Because I think people want to learn. What do I need to be in the future? What position?
So John, it's a great question. I think Ansible actually addresses a number of the issues you brought up, which is, historically there have been different tools for each of the different groups. So developers had their favorite set of tools, and different IT areas had their favorite set of tools and technologies, and it was sort of like a Tower of Babel. People did not share the same sort of languages and tools. Ansible crosses both your development, test, and operational teams, so it creates a common language now that can be used across different teams. It's easy to understand, so it sort of democratizes automation. You don't have to be deeply skilled in some bespoke language or technology in order to be able to do some level of automation. So I think sort of sharing the same technology and tools like an Ansible, democratizing it so that more people can get involved in automating, sharing that automation across teams and unifying those worlds is huge, right? So I think that's a game changer as well in terms of getting these teams to work holistically and integrated in the future.
Yeah, and there's also a Better Together panel on Ansible and Advanced Cluster Management session. Folks watching should check it out on the virtual event platform on that point. While I got you here on that point, let's talk about the portfolio updates for Advanced Cluster Management for Kubernetes. What's new since the Ansible Fest announcements?
There's quite a bit that's been new since Ansible Fest. At Ansible Fest, actually going back to Summit last year, we introduced Advanced Cluster Management. For years, we've been seeing the growth of Kubernetes with cloud native and clusters. And what ACM really allows enterprises to do is scale out their deployments of OpenShift. And one of the things we found is that as you're deploying workloads or clusters or trying to take care of the compliance, the importance of integrating that environment with the breadth of capabilities that Ansible has in automation. So that's what we announced at Ansible Fest following last year's summit. What we've done is put a lot more focus on that integration with Ansible. So when you bring up, provision a cluster, maybe you need to make some storage or security configurations on behalf of that cluster, or if you're taking care of the compliance, how do you remediate any issues with Ansible? Or one of the things that gets shown a lot, demonstrated a lot, what customers like is when you're deploying applications into production, how do you configure the network, do the network configurations like a load balancer, maybe a ticket into your service management system, along with, say, threat detection on your security. So a lot of advances with ACM in the integration with the broader ecosystem of IT, in particular with Ansible.
What's the ecosystem update for partners? And this comes up all the time. I want to make sure I get this in there. I missed it last time we chatted. The partner impact to this. You mentioned the ecosystem. And you got native Kubernetes, non-native, what's native to open. You guys got a lot of native things, and sometimes it's just support for other clouds. So you start to get into the integration questions. Partners are very interested in what you guys are doing. Can you share the partner update on how they play and what impacts them the most here?
Yeah, on the advanced cluster management, the ACM front, first, with this integration with Ansible, that actually allows us to integrate with the wealth of partner ecosystem that Ansible has, which is huge. So that's one space. And then the way ACM works, this policy desired state model, is we've been able to integrate with a large number of partners around, particularly the security space, a lot of the service management space, where we can enforce the use of certain security tools on the clusters themselves. So it's really opened up how quickly partner offerings can be integrated into the OpenShift environment at scale across all the clusters that you want, that you need it supported on, with the appropriate configurations and policies.
Joe, I got to ask you on the insight side, you mentioned the expansion across the platforms. Now, if you go out, take it out to the ecosystem, there's guardrails around governance. How far can partners push their data in terms of sharing? That's something that might come up. Can you comment on that?
Sure. So Red Hat, takes, our customer data very seriously, and we're a trusted partner to our customers. So the data that we get from systems, we make sure that we are following all of the governance and oversight necessary to protect that data. So far, we have basically been collecting that data and using that data at Red Hat. Our plan really is to allow partners with the right degree of governance and control to be able to use some of that data in the future under the right conditions, whether it's anonymized or aggregated, things like that, to be able to take that data and to add value to customers. If they can enrich customers or help customers by getting some access to that data without every vendor or partner having to go out to systems and having to connect and pull data back, that's a pretty tough situation for customers to live with. But I think that fact that Red Hat is trusted, we've been doing this for a while, we know how to handle the data, we know how to provide the governance, but our plan really is to enable partners to use that data ecosystem. I will say that in addition to what Dave said about ACM and partners, Ansible has been working with partners on the automation side at a very large scale, right? So if you look at the amount of partners that are doing automation work with us, we have some pretty strong, depth there in terms of working with partners. Our plan is to take the data ecosystem and expand that as well.
It's really a nice mix between the Ansible, OpenShift, and then RHEL. You guys have great insights across now. I think the open innovation just continues to be, every year I say the same thing, it's almost like a broken record, but every year it just gets better and better. Innovation out in the open, you guys doing a great job and continuing. And now, certainly as the pandemic looks like it's coming to an end soon, post-pandemic, a lot more projects are being worked on, a lot more productivity, as we said at the top. So to end the segment out, I'd love to get you guys to weigh in on what happens next as we come out of the pandemic. The table's been set, the foundation's there. Cloud native is continuing to accelerate rapidly in the open source going to almost another level. What's next? What's next for customers? Are they going to continue to double down on the wins? They're going to shut down certain projects? What happens after this pandemic? How do people grow? Dave, we'll start with you.
Well, I think, yes, we all see the light at the end of the tunnel, John. That is great.
God.
And I think if a positive is really, throughout this, we've been accelerating the digitization and app modernization across the board, cross industries, okay? And that is really teaching all of us a lot about the importance of how do you start managing and running this at scale and securing this at scale. So I think what we'll see coming out of this is just that much more effort on open ecosystems, how you really bring together data across insights, how you bring an increasing amount of analytics, AI, to now do something, turn that data into information that you can respond with, and that in turn closing the loop with automation against your hybrid cloud environment. We're just going to see acceleration of that occurring.
Awesome, great insights there. Open, data, insights, automation, all kind of coming together, AI. If you don't have AI in your plans, someone was Wall Street was joking, that's going to be the future table stakes that get listed on Wall Street. You got to have some sort of AI piece. Dave, great insight. Joe, your take on what's next, what's going to happen as we come out of the pandemic?
Yeah, we've definitely seen people, advance their digital transformation, and I don't think it's going to stop, right? So the speed, scale, and complexity are just going to put more pressure on teams, right, to be able to support these environments that are evolving at light speed. So I think Red Hat is really well positioned and is a great partner for folks who are trying to get more digital, faster, trying to leverage these technologies from the hybrid cloud to the edge. They're going to need lots of help. Red Hat is in a great position to help them.
You guys doing great work. Dave Lindquist, Joe Fitzgerald, great to have you back on. Again, open always wins. And as end users become much more participants in the open source ecosystem, end user contributions, end user interactions, software at scale, it's now a new next generation commercial environment. You guys doing a great job. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay, Red Hat Summit 21 CUBE coverage. I'm John Furrier, getting all the action from the experts who've been there, done that, living through it, being more productive, and bringing benefits to you being open source. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 21 virtual conference. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We're here with Kevin Martelli, Principal Software Engineer at KPMG, joining the conversation. Kevin, great to see you. Thanks for coming on.
John, thanks a lot for having me.
So obviously Red Hat, a lot of action, cloud native, part of IBM now, a lot of talk going on around this growth around cloud. Massive new opportunities, new modern applications being shaped in, super exciting opportunities. So first, before we get into all that, tell us about your role at KPMG.
Sure, John, thanks. So my role at KPMG, I'm one of our cloud leaders at KPMG, where I really help both from an internal perspective, so helping our internal enablement and digitalization, as well as more importantly, helping to deliver solutions and applications to our clients as they go through these digital journeys, and really focusing on containerization and enablement through the cloud.
You guys have done a lot of AI work, I know, which is cutting edge, it's pretty much data driven. I mean, AI is, what everyone talks about, but underlying AI is automation, data, machine learning, really dealing with kind of new types of data sets, not just dealing with existing structures. You have a new platform called Ignite. Tell us what that is. What do you guys solve? What was the problem statement, and what's going on with it?
Yeah, John, thanks a lot for asking. So Ignite is something that we developed internally initially, and was really helped to solve our AI initiatives. We called it our AI platform, but it's more so an ecosystem, and it solves not only our own internal needs and internal use cases, but also it's used to help support and deliver these solutions to clients. One of the foundational principles of our platform is it's built on top of containerization, which we know is a hot area now today in the marketplace. Really gives you the ability for scalability, flexibility, security, et cetera. But more important, what we're seeing large scale of adoptions in our clients is using this platform to really get value out of both unstructured and structured data in a way that they're able to do this in a secured fashion and then easily get it deployed. It's a pretty scalable platform and something that has just recently received a patent for it.
So what was the internal conversation to put this together? Was it the fact that there was business needs, cloud native gave you that scale advantage? What was some of the drivers behind Ignite? Because this is like, was it IoT? Was it, take us through the mindset. What were some of the first principles around building this?
Yeah, John, thanks. It's a good question. And actually, to be fair, this was probably a little bit before the time of IoT and some of these newer technologies were coming up. And at this time, we were really kind of scratching on the surface of data science and advanced analytics. And what really generated the need for this is, as you can imagine, working at a consultancy firm, and many of our clients deal with tons of contracts and the LIBOR documents for financial services. There was so much rich information in these unstructured data documents, and we had no way to get this information out. So really, it was generated out of the need to get information out of a lot of these contractual documents that we had and pinpoint specific information. So really taking it holistically on ingestion, on transformations, running NLP, algorithms. It really evolved into a whole end-to-end complete platform, running on top of a containerized ecosystem such as OpenShift.
Yeah, I mean, I think, not to go on a tangent here, but I think one of the conversations we've been having on all these events, and certainly with COVID, was the highlight of all these silos. And the old days was, well, break down the silos, but now with containers and cloud scale, you can extract out data, kind of create that horizontal data plane, if you will, or view, observation space, some call it. I mean, this just seems to be a huge trend. You guys were on it early. How is that? What's your take on that? I mean, the silos used to be kind of like an advantage if you had a monolithic application, but now you have a lot of diverse distributed databases. What's your take?
Yeah, it's good. How we are kind of coining it is really through the power of some of the tooling and OpenShift that really gives organizations the ability to defer risk, right? In the sense that allows you to run certain types of workloads on-prem in a private cloud, containerized way. It allows you to burst certain other types of workloads into the different CSP providers, so you can get advantage of their scale, of their capacity without maybe moving some sensitive data. And then another benefit with some of that vendor lock-in that sometimes clients are concerned about is being able to kind of easily deploy your workloads and applications from one cloud provider to another. And I think as we look at this distributed processing, no one client will totally be in one cloud provider. So having the ability to move workloads quickly and fastly where they make sense, where the security and risk is aligned, is something that would make successful use cases deployments.
So let me ask you the question. You guys, KPMG also have your own big data effort going on with analytics. You got clients that you serve, and ultimately they have customers as well. So you have that Red Hat equation. What are some of the advantages that you guys see at your firm and your clients with Red Hat analytics? Because this becomes ultimately the number one conversation. It's like, okay, what's in it for me?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I would say we're seeing a few things. Some of them are highlighted. One is, as you're well aware, we chose Red Hat's OpenShift as one of our strategic options to deploy our Ignite platform. And whenever you're deploying these platforms, it's very important that you have the flexibility, the agility, and the ability to scale. And Red Hat underneath the hood really helps take care of a lot of that, for you in a way that not only can you do it on your own, as we mentioned earlier, your private cloud, but also onto the public CSPs and multiple CSPs. In addition, some of the other things I think that we saw that were very beneficial, a lot of times as an application user, so application users of Ignite, the developers, the data scientists, the business users, the analysts, they all need to interact with the platform. They want to worry about getting the insights, about getting the efficiencies of the platform. They don't want to worry about how the infrastructure is being put together, how the workloads are being moved, how the scalability is occurring, et cetera. And Red Hat really takes a lot of that away from you having to worry about it. And one of the other, I think, things that's also important is we have a strategic relationship with Red Hat. And as we look to help to enhance and develop these capabilities and experiences as our clients are doing private cloud, hybrid cloud, and multi-cloud, we're really going to be able to let them take the power of open source into their own control and how they want to deploy it themselves.
Well, I got you on the topic there. I got to ask you the question, what would you say to the people out there that haven't really kicked the tires on Red Hat in a while? What's the modern update? How would you describe the current situation at Red Hat for people who are going to relook and or bring the Red Hat conversation up a notch?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we see this in any type of software in the industry today. There's so many choices and there's so many options out there. And how do you choose the right source for the right use case, for the right client, for the right company? And how we always like to talk with clients is that, yes, there are a lot of choices in there in the orchestration for containerization. But when you're looking for something best of breed in the market that has the security built into it that many organizations are looking for, that gives you the flexibility without having to do a lot of additional operational overhead of moving from on-prem into the cloud, and the way that it can scale and kind of make the overall ecosystem operations and deployments easier. It's one of the benefits we see of going with a tool like Red Hat OpenShift.
Well, Kevin, I really appreciate the comments there and on Red Hat. That's awesome. Red Hat Summit, obviously a big event around Red Hat and future cloud and modern applications. So I got to ask you, as a software engineering leader in the industry, You got to be pretty excited about artificial intelligence and machine learning as it relates to, what it can be doing for changing the software development paradigm. Obviously, there's also no code, low code, serverless, you got cloud native, you got containers, you get all this new capability. So how do you see those trends? What are the big trends around machine learning and AI as it relates to someone who's going to be building modern applications in the cloud? Because certainly there's a huge upside there. Some are saying that if you don't have AI, that's going to be a table stakes and will lower the valuation of the software or the application. What's your take on all these big trends around AI?
Yeah, I agree with that. And we've actually done several studies, and what we're hearing industry leaders saying is quite a few things. One is we at KPMG coined COVID-19 whiplash. and really what that means is that the pace and acceleration of adoption in AI has been tremendous over the COVID-19 period, over our pandemic period. And so much so that industry leaders are a little bit concerned about how fast this adoption is going, and is it going too fast? In addition, we recently published a study called Thriving in an AI World, where we were able to identify that business leaders and insiders are really bullish on, to your point, of using AI and ML to make some core critical decisions. How can we make vaccines? What's the distribution process? Fraudulent analytics for financial services. However, what I will say is we're still seeing a lot of questions and challenges around AI, its security, its ethics associated to it, right? How can you manage it and govern it in your process? Then privacy associated to it. So there's a lot of points around those areas I think that industries are still trying to struggle and figure out how to solve for. And one of the things that we are hearing is that with the new administration, there's different, think tanks and industry leaders that are feeling that the new administration, while open to a lot of these advanced techniques and technologies, are going to put a little bit more rigor around and regulations around how AI can be used in the marketplace. So hopefully that will give some companies guidance around these security and privacy and ethics concerns.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was talking to a friend the other day who's a leader at a big company that's a customer of Red Hat and a lot of other clouds as well. And we were joking about the agility, speed. Oh, agility and speed. Of course, yeah, you get that with here. But you got a lot of fast and loose situations going here. You got to know when to put the pedal to the metal, when there's a straight and narrow, you can really kind of gas it with AI and machine learning, and then know where the potential curves are, if you will, use that metaphor. Because you can go fast, but with speed comes dangerous new things for breakage. It's always, and you're seeing that all the time. You're seeing that, with software because you can push a new update. But still, when you talk about operational integrity and security, fast and loose isn't always the best way to go. But but if you know there's a straight and narrow, you can really push it. This was what we were saying is like, hey, we know when to go straight and narrow and go fast, and then when to slow it down, pull it back. What's your take on that? What's your assessment?
No, I agree. I think you hit some valid points there. And sometimes what we do is we take some antiquated processes and we overlay them into these newer technologies and we try to think them as being the same way, and they may not always hold true. But it's not only kind of the fast and narrow and then putting things in that may be a little bit more simplistic, but it's also there's a whole change around how you productionalize, how do you get these things into deployment, how do you monitor these over time so some of those biases or some of those privacy concerns don't end up creeping up into the algorithm over time. I still think that what we're hearing from industries, there's still struggles around that. There's still struggles around, there's a lot of technologies that can do a lot of these same things. Our business processes don't always align. And then how do we really take something from an innovation, from a POC into production, right? Is there a fast track for something that is straight and narrow and something that has a little bit more complexity? But what we're seeing today is a lot sort of follow the same road, which makes bringing more complex AI algorithms into production challenging.
Yeah, and there's always that big trend of day two operations, which is, hey, you deploy it, it's great, and then, okay, wait a minute, stuff's starting to break, we need better monitoring, we need better data analytics, what's instrumented, what's not, what services are being generated and terminated. These are all big cloud native kind of themes. With that, I got to ask you from a customer standpoint, these are new first generation problems at scale with this new cloud native environment. There's pros and cons. How do you guys talk to customers? What are some of the things you're seeing around the challenges that they face with analytics, all this analytic activity?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges, and we've probably heard this year in, year out, is around data literacy, right? Like really having our folks understand the data and empowering them to be successful in the organization. And to be fair, I would say data literacy was a little bit more narrowly focused in organizations. Who needed it? I need some analysts to use it. I needed some data scientists, engineers. But what we're starting to see now is there's larger programs across the board where it's more holistic at an organizational level. Everyone should be involved in data. Everyone should be able to do their own reporting. So really data literacy and getting data kind of into the arms of the folks is important. Some of the other ones that we've also kind of talked to about, and they kind of go hand in hand, and maybe a little bit on our prior conversation, was the technologies. Technology, especially in open source, is exploding, as well as commercial, right? So how do you choose the right technologies, the right tools? You don't have too many tools in your toolbox per se, but use the ones that are really differentiating and try to standardize on the ones that are more standard. Finally, it's bringing those processes and wrapping them back into the technologies. Again, a little point we hit on earlier, but what we're finding is as technology is rapidly, increasing, you're able to use it for your analytics. Your processes are still antiquated and legacy processes, which makes it, a little bit harder for you to really take advantage of, what you're trying to achieve in your organization from a digital transformation. And then, one final one I would add in there is around the risk that organizations have, right? So there's a lot of concern about reputational risk if they're doing these types of activities, that people don't understand the data, they don't understand the algorithms. Are there some impacts that can be had? And they're figuring out how to control that and then how not to. And then I think finally the workforce, as we know, it's getting the workforce up to speed, retooling where need be, and putting their people in the right place to be successful.
Kevin, that's great insight. Thanks so much for coming on theCUBE. I got to ask you one final question.
Sure.
One more thing. You mentioned COVID whiplash. There's a lot of post-COVID activity, discussions going on. If you look at what's happened with COVID, there's been an exposure of all the projects that need to be doubled down on, ones that may not be continuing. People working at home, obviously a change of the environment. You mentioned workforces among others. What do you think the biggest conversation around your customer base or within KPMG right now around some of these growth strategies around post-COVID? What are companies thinking around how to deploy the people, process, and technologies? Big part of this conversation. What is the post-COVID general theme that you're seeing among large enterprises and business in general?
It's a good question. So I think in general, we're seeing the acceleration of digital agendas that may have been pushed out for 5 years, pulling it in closer. But one of the most interesting things I think that I've gathered out of working with the clients that we're working with is that, before to get stuff into production, AI solutions, even any type of smaller production system, it was taking months, several months to get something in production. And it seemed to be once the COVID pandemic hit, organizations can accelerate that journey of deployment of applications into production in very, very quick timeframes without, hindering or impacting any types of control frameworks that they have in place, but just working quicker. So I think some of the things I see as we move forward is that these digital agendas are going to be pulled forward more quicker. The day this a POC is good or a pilot's good is long past. It's now they want to see the results in the outputs in the enterprise in production. And I think they realize that they have the tools to do this in a period of time that is weeks versus months, and in some cases years.
So would you agree then, just as a quick follow-up to that obviously when we get back to real life, post-COVID, that the visibility and the economics and the productivity gains from this new environment is going to stay around longer and be permanent? Do you agree with that statement?
I hope it is, but we are creatures of habit, and sometimes we go back to the way that we have done things. But I'm hopeful that they were able to be successful in these types of environments and make these types of decisions, that those processes start evolving to take into consideration what we learned during this terrible pandemic and be able to apply that to post-pandemic.
Yeah, who would have known the word hybrid cloud actually means something more than just cloud technologies. Hybrid events, hybrid workforces, the word hybrid has been kicked around. Kevin, thanks so much for coming on theCUBE here for the Red Hat Summit coverage. Thanks for coming on, great insight.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. I'm John Furrier with theCUBE here for Red Hat Summit coverage 2021 virtual. Thanks for watching. Hello and welcome back to theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 2021 virtual. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We're here in Palo Alto. We're remote with our great guest here, CUBE alumni, been on many times, Chris Wright, Senior Vice President and CTO of Red Hat. Chris, great to see you. Always a pleasure to have you on the screen here. Too bad we're not in person, but thanks for coming in remote.
Yeah, you bet. Glad to be here.
Yeah, not only we're talking about speeds and feeds, digital transformation going under the hood here, we're going to talk about Red Hat's expanded collaboration with Boston University to help fund education and research for open source projects. So you guys have a huge relationship with Boston University. Talk about this continued commitment. What's the news? What's the story?
Well, we have a couple different things going on. And the relationship we have with BU is many years in, so this itself isn't brand new. One of the things that's important to highlight here is we are giving something north of $550 million worth of software to BU, really in pursuit of running, powering and running scaled infrastructure that's part of the open hybrid cloud. And that's an important piece which we can touch on a little bit as we talk through this conversation. The other one is, like I said, this isn't a new relationship with BU. And what we're doing now is really expanding the relationship. So we've built a great connection directly with BU. We're substantially expanding that. The original relationship we had was a $5 million relationship spread over 5 years. Now we're talking about a $20 million relationship spread over 5 years. So really a significant expansion. And of course, that expansion is connected to some of the work that we plan to do together in this open hybrid cloud infrastructure and research space. So a lot of things coming together at once to really, really advance the Red Hat Collaboratory at BU, that combined effort in bringing, cloud research and open source and all these things together.
And a lot of action going on, specifically in the Boston area, a lot of universities. But I love the shirt you're wearing where it says Red Hat Innovation in the Open. This is kind of one of those things. You also mentioned, obviously, this huge subscription of software grant that's going to BU, just huge number of value for the Boston University. But you also have another project that's been going on, the Collaborative Research and Education Agreement called the Red Hat Collaboratory. Okay, this was in place. You mentioned that. How's that tying in now? Because that was pre-existing. Now you got the grant. You're funding more and more research. Talk about how this connects into the open cloud initiative, because this is kind of interesting. You're now bringing hybrid cloud kind of research and practical value in. AI ops is hot. I mean, you can't go anywhere these days without having great observability. Cloud native more and more is more complex, and you got these young students and researchers dying to get their hands on it. Take us through the connection between the collaboratory and open cloud.
So the collaboratory is a clever name that just talks about collaboration and research, laboratory type research. And initially the collaboratory focus was on the infrastructure running the cloud, and some of the application workloads that can run on top of an open cloud infrastructure that's very data centric. And so this is an opportunity for multidisciplinary work, looking at modeling for healthcare, for example, for how you can improve imaging. And we've had great results in this collaboration. We've talked at times about the relationship with the Boston Children's Hospital and the CHRIS project, not related to me, but just similar acronym that spells CHRIS. And these things come together in part through connecting relationships to academia, where academia's research is increasingly built in, on, and around open source software. So, if you think of sort of two parallel worlds, open source software development, just the activity of building open source software, it brings so many people together and it moves so quickly that if you're not directly connected to that as an academic researcher, you risk producing academic research results that aren't relevant, because it's hard for them to connect back to these large, fast-moving projects, which may have invented a solution to the problem you've been focused on as an academic if you're not directly connected. So we see academia and open source coming together to build really a next generation of understanding of the scientific endeavor.
And these joint operations you're talking about here, though, this is significant because there's dollars behind it, right? There's real money. It's not just software. It's a center. It's a joint operation.
That's right. And so when you think about just the academic research of producing ideas that manifest themselves as code and software projects, we want to make sure we're first connecting the software projects to open source communities, and with our own engineering experience, bringing code into these open source projects to just advance the the speeds, the kind of functionality, the state of the art of the actual project. We're also taking this to a new level with this expanded relationship. And that is software today, when you operate software as a cloud, a critical part of the software is the operationalization of that software. So software just sitting there on the shelf doesn't do anybody any good, even if the shelf is an open source project and it's a tarball waiting for you to download. If you don't ever grab it and run it, it's not doing anybody any good. And if the challenge of running it is substantial enough that it stops you from using that software, you've created a barrier to the value that's locked inside that project. The focus here is how can we take the operations experience of running a cloud, which itself is a big complex distributed system, tie some of those experiences back into the projects that are used to build that infrastructure. So you're taking not just the output of the project, but also the understanding of what it takes to run a project and bringing that understanding and even the automation and code associated with that back into the project. So you're operationalizing this open source software, and you're building deeper understanding of what it means to operate things at scale, including data and data sets that you can use to build models that show how you can create the remediation and closed loop systems with AI and machine learning, sort of synthesizing all the data that you generate out of a big distributed infrastructure and feed that back into the operations of that same infrastructure. So a lot going on there at the same time. Operationalization as an open source initiative, but also really the understanding and advancement of AI and data-centric operations, so AI ops and closed loop remediation.
Yeah, it's DevOps, developer and operations. You got to operationalize it, and certainly cloud native put an emphasis on day two operations, which leads to a lot more research, a lot more student work on understanding the coding environment. So with that, I got to ask you about this Massachusetts focused or this open cloud initiative, because you guys are talking about this open cloud initiative, including this Massachusetts open cloud. What is that? What is the Massachusetts open cloud? It sounds like you're offering a kind of open approach, not just BU, but other institutions.
That's right. So the MOC, Massachusetts Open Cloud, is itself a cross organizational collaboration, bringing together 5 different academic institutions in New England and Massachusetts. It's BU, it's Harvard, it's MIT, it's Northeastern, and it's UMass coming together to support a common set of infrastructure, which is cloud. It's a cloud that runs in a data center. And then it serves a couple of different purposes. One is research on clouds directly. So what does it mean to run a cloud? What does it look like from a research point of view to understand large-scale distributed systems? And then the other is more on top. When you have a cloud, you can run workloads, and those workloads scaled out to do, say, data processing, looking at the implications of across different fields, which could be natural sciences, could be medicine, could be even political science or social sciences. So really a multidisciplinary view of what it means to leverage a cloud and run data-centric workloads on top. So 2 different areas that are of a focus for the MOC, and this becomes this sort of vehicle for collaboration between Red Hat and BU and the Red Hat Collaboratory.
So I have to ask, only because I'm a big fan of the area and went to one of those schools, is there like a bean pot for technical hackathons where you get all the schools matched up against each other on the Mass Open Cloud and compete for who gets bragging rights in the tech city there?
It's a great question. Not yet, but I'll jot that down here to make sure we follow up on that.
Happy to sponsor. We'll do the play-by-play coverage. Great.
I love that. Yeah, kind of Twitch TV style. The one thing that there is, which is very practical, is academic research grants themselves are competitive, right? People are vying for research dollars. So you put together proposals, bring those proposals to the agency that's giving out grants, and winning those grants is certainly prestigious. It's important. It's part of how research institutes continue to fund the work that they're doing. Now, we've been associated through the work we've done to date with BU with almost $15 million in grants to do research, which itself has published nearly 20 papers. So there's a lot of work. You can't quite call it the play-by-play.
It's a scoreboard. I mean, they're numbers. You can put numbers on the board. I mean, that's what's one of the things you can measure. But let me ask you on those grants. So you're saying this is just the BU. You guys actually have data on the impact of the relationship in terms of grants and papers and stuff like that, academic work?
That's right. That's right. And so those numbers that I'm giving you are examples of how we've worked together with BU to help their faculty generate grant dollars that then fund some of the research that's happening there together with Red Hat engineers and on the infrastructure like the Massachusetts Open Cloud. That's
a good way to look at the scoreboard. It's a good point. We'll have to research that. If you don't mind me asking on this data that you have, are all those projects contributing to open source, or do they have to be, is that just generic, is that all papers around BU, or is this part of the research? In other words, I'm trying to think, if I'm in open source, how does this contribute to me as an open source person?
It's a big and complex question because there's so much research that can happen through a research institution. And those research grants tend to be governed with agreements, and some of those agreements have intellectual property rights front and center and might require things like open source software as a result. The stuff that we're working on clearly is in that focus area of open source software and research activities that help kind of propel our understanding forward of what does it mean to do large-scale distributed systems creation and then operation. So how do you develop the software that does it? How do you run the software that builds these big, large distributed systems? So we're focused in that area. Some of the work that we facilitated through that focus includes integrating non-open source software that might be part of, say, medical imaging. So for example, work we've done with the Boston Children's Hospital, that isn't 100%, doesn't require us to be involved 100% in the open source pieces. All the infrastructure there to support it is. And so we're learning how we can build integrated pipelines for data analysis and image analysis and data sharing across different institutions at the open source project level. But maybe we have a specific imaging program that is not generated from this project. And of course, that's okay with us.
You know, Chris, you bring up a good point with all this conversation. I can see this really connecting the dots. Most computer science programs, most engineering programs haven't really traditionally focused on IT at the scale we're talking about, because when you look at cloud scale, but now scaling with hybrid, it's real engineering going on to think about the large scale. We know all the big hyperscalers, right? So it's not just IT provisioning, network connection and doing some IT work. We're talking about large scale. So I have to ask you, as you guys look at these relationships with academics and academia like BU and others, how are the students responding to this? Are you guys seeing any specific graduate level advancements? Because you're talking about operational roles that are becoming so important, whether it's cybersecurity and as cloud native, because once we're data driven, you need to have all this new scale engineered up.
That's right.
How do you look at that?
There's two different pieces that I would highlight. One is just the data science itself. So schools still need to produce data scientists, and having data is a big part of being a data scientist, and knowing what your goals are with that data, and then experimenting with different techniques, whether it's algorithms or tools. It's a big part of being a data scientist, sort of spelunking through the data. So we're helping produce data. We're looking at data science efforts around data that's used to operationalize infrastructure, which is an interesting data science endeavor by itself. The other piece is really what you highlighted, which is there's an emergence of a skill set in the industry, often referred to as SRE, Site Reliability Engineering. It is a engineering discipline. And if you back up a little bit and you start thinking about what are the underlying principles behind large scale distributed systems, you get to some information theory and computer science. So this isn't just something that you might think of as some simple training of a few key tools and knowing how to interpret a dashboard and you're good to go. This is a much more sophisticated view of what does it mean to really operate large-scale infrastructure, which to date, there aren't a lot of these large-scale infrastructures available to academics to research because they're commercial endeavors. So
and they're new too. I mean, think about,
labs.
I was talking to some young folks, my son's age and daughter's age, and I was saying, you know, architecting a building, a skyscraper isn't trivial. You can't just do that overnight. There's a lot of engineering that goes on in that science, but you're bringing kind of operating systems theory, systems thinking to distributed computing. I mean, that's a combination of a interdisciplinary shift. And you got, I won't say civil engineering, but like concept is there. You got structure, you got networks that are changing, and then you got software. So again, completely new area.
That's right. And there's not a lot of even curriculum that explores this space. So one of the opportunities, there's a great program that really focuses on that space of site reliability engineering or operationalizing software. And then the other piece that I'm really excited about is connecting to open source communities so that as we build software, we have a way to run and operationalize that software that doesn't have to be directly tied to a commercial outlet. So, products running in a cloud will have a commercial SLA and commercial agreements between the user and the producer of that service. How do you do that in an open source context? How do you leverage a community, bring that community software to a community run service, learn through the running of that service how to best build, architect the service itself, and then operationalize with the tooling and automation that service? How do you bring that into the open source community? And that's something that we've been referring to as the Operate First initiative. How do you get the operationalization of software really thought of as a primary focal point in a software project, where you normally think about the internals of the software, the features, the capabilities, the functionality, less about the operationalization. So important shift at the open source project level, which is something that I think will really be interesting, and we'll see reaping a lot of rewards just in open source communities directly.
Yeah, speed and durability, certainly having that reliability is great. I love talking with you guys at Red Hat because you know software, you know open source, and you know operating systems, because as it comes together in this modern era, what a great fit. Great work you're doing with Boston Universities and the Mass Open Cloud Initiative. Congratulations on that. I got to ask you about this Red Hat Graduate Fellows program you have, because this kind of speaks to what you guys are doing. You have this kind of this Red Hat Graduate Fellows network and the work that's being done. Does that translate into Red Hat at all from an engineering standpoint? How does that work together?
Basically what we do is we support PhD students, we support postdocs, so there's a real direct support to the, that is the Red Hat Graduate Fellow Program. And our focus there is connecting those academics, the faculty members and the students, to our engineers to work together on key research initiatives that we think will help drive open source software agendas forward. It's really broad, can be in all different areas, from security to virtualization to the operating systems to cloud distributed systems. And one of the things that we've discovered is it creates a great relationship with the university, and we find students that will be excited to leave university and come into the industry workforce and work at Red Hat. So there is a direct talent relationship between the work that we do at BU and the talent that we can bring into Red Hat, which is awesome. We know these people, we've worked well with them, but also we're kind of expanding understanding of open source across more and more of academia, which I think is really valuable and important for Red Hat when you just go out to the industry at large, and helping bring a set of skills to the industry that whether they're coming, whether these are students that come into Red Hat or go elsewhere into the industry, these are important skills to have in the industry. So we look at, the how do you work in open source communities? How do you operationalize software at scale? These are important things that
open up new, expand the territory, if you will, in terms of systems thinking we just talked about. Great collaboration. You guys do a great job. Chris, great to have you on. Quick final word from you on this year at Red Hat Summit. I know it's virtual again. Wish we could be in person, but we're starting to come out of the COVID. It's kind of post-COVID right around the corner. What's the update? How would you describe the current state of Red Hat? Obviously, you guys still got that vibe. You're still pumping strong. A lot going on. What's the current bumper sticker? What's the vibe?
Well, in many ways, because we're so large and distributed, the last year has been, I can't say business as usual because it's been an impact on everybody, but it hasn't required us to fundamentally change. And as we work across open source communities, there's been a lot of continuity that's come through a workforce that's gone completely distributed. People are anxious to get to the next phase, whatever back to normal means. And people at Red Hat are no different. So we're looking forward to what it can mean to spend time with colleagues in offices. We're looking forward to what it means to spend time together with our friends and families and travel and all those things. But from a business point of view, Red Hat's focus on the open hybrid cloud and that distributed view of how we work with open source communities, that's something that's only continued to grow and pick up over the course of the last year. So it's a clearly an important area for the industry, and we've been busier than ever the last year. So interesting times for everybody.
Well, it's great to see, and I love how the culture maintains its relevance, its coolness, intersection between software, open source, and systems. Great work, and congratulations, Chris. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, I'm John Furrier here with theCUBE for Red Hat Summit 2021. Thanks for watching. Hello, and welcome back to theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 21 virtual. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. This year virtual again, soon to be in real life post-COVID as the fall comes into play. We're going to start to see life come back and the digital transformation continue to accelerate. And we got a great guest, Stephanie Chira, Senior Vice President and General Manager at Red Hat, CUBE alumni. Great to see you. Stephanie, thanks for coming on.
No, it's my pleasure, John. Thanks for having me. I am thrilled to be here with you and look forward to doing it in person soon.
I can't wait. A lot of people on their vaccines. Some say that by the fall, vaccines, where pretty much everyone 12 and over will be vaccinated. But we're going to start to see the onboarding of real life again, but never going to be the same. Digital business at the speed of online, offline, almost redefine and reimagine, not the old offline, online paradigms. You're starting to see that come together. That's the focus. That's the top story in the technology industry. That really brings together the topic that I'd like to talk to you about, which is edge computing and RHEL and Linux. This is the topic where all the action is. Obviously, hybrid operating models have been pretty much agreed upon by the industry. That is the way it is. Multi-cloud is on the horizon, but edge, part of the distributed system. This is where the action is, a natural extension to the open hybrid cloud, which you guys have been pioneering. Take me through your thoughts on this edge computing dynamic with RHEL.
Yeah, so as you said, we have been on this open hybrid cloud strategy for 8 years or so, very focused on providing customers choice, both in where they run, what they run, how they run their applications. And the beauty of this strategy is the strategy endures because it's able to adapt to new technologies coming in. And as you said, edge is where things are happening now. It's enabling customers to do so many new and different things. You take kind of all of the dynamics that are happening in technology with data being produced everywhere, new even architectures and compute capabilities that can bring compute right out there to the data. You get 5G networks coming in, and incredible advances in telco and networking. You pull that out. Now you've created a dynamic where the technology can really make edge a viable place to now extend how open hybrid cloud can reach and deliver value. And our goal is to bring our platform and our ecosystem to do everything from the core of your data center out to public clouds, multiple public clouds, and now bring that all the way out to the edge.
You talk about edge, you talk about decentralization, distributed computing. These are the paradigms that are getting reimagined, if you will, and expanded. You guys talk about, and you talk about specifically this idea of digital first economy requires a new kind of infrastructure. Talk about this, because this is, some say virtual first, media first, data first, video first, developer first. Everything's like a first thing, but this focuses on the new normal. Take us through this new economy.
It's really about how you focus on being able to deliver digitally with decisions near the data and to be able to adapt to that. It's thinking about how you take footprints, and now your footprint out at the edge becomes a part of that. I think one of the things that's really exciting about edge is it does have some specific use case requirements, and we're seeing some things come back. Things like, we've talked in the past about heterogeneous computing and heterogeneous architectures and the possibilities that exist there. Now at the edge, we're seeing different architectures show up, which is great to see. Being able to bring a platform that can allow the use of those different architectures out at the edge to deliver value is a great thing. In addition, we're seeing bare metal come back out at the edge. You can really imagine spaces where out at the edge you have new architectures with bare metal deployments, and you're operating containers that are touching directly onto that bare metal. It brings a whole new paradigm to how to deliver value, but now we can bring the consistency of what Linux and RHEL and OpenShift with containers can bridge across that whole space.
So heterogeneous computing, distributed computing, multi-vendor, if you kind of weave those keywords together, you have to have a supporting operating model that allows for different services, cloud services, network services, application services, work together. This kind of puts an emphasis on a control plane, a software platform that can bring this together. This is the core, if I understand the Red Hat strategy properly. You guys are going right at this point. Is that true?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It is when everything else, you can get value from everything else changing, what stays the same to help keep you efficient and consistent across it. And that's where we focus on the platforms. And as open hybrid cloud changes with different optionalities, our focus is to bring that sort of single common control plane that provides consistency so you can develop once and reuse, but make it adaptable to how you want to leverage that application as a container, as a VM on bare metal, out at the edge on multiple public clouds. It's really about expanding that landscape that open hybrid cloud can touch. And you'll see in other discussions, one of the places we're going into new is in the edge. Managed services also become part of that paradigm. So it really is our focus to be that common control plane, provide accessibility while still delivering consistency. And let's face it, consistency down at the operating system level, that's what starts to deliver you things like security. And boy, it's a critical topic today, right? To make sure that as you expand and distribute and you got compute running out there with data, security is top of mind.
I have to ask you, we've been having many conversations in the open source community, Linux Foundation, CNCF, KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, and other communities. And the common thread is, and I want to get your reaction to this statement. The statement is, edge computing's foundation must be open across the board. Talk about, what's your reaction to that, and how does that relate to Red Hat and what you guys are doing at the edge and with RHEL?
We really believe in open source brings compatibility and standardization that allows innovation to grow. In any new technology, fragmentation causes the death of the new technology. So our focus is, it will have to be, we firmly believe it absolutely has to be built on an open platform that has standards so that the ecosystem, and the ecosystem around edge is complex. You have multiple hardware capabilities, multiple vendors. Any edge deployment will be multi-vendor. So how do you pull all of that together in an ecosystem? It is about having that foundation be open and be able to be accessible and built upon by everyone.
You were talking earlier about the edge and 5G, and we were just talking about open. This is the future of computing, both consumer and enterprise, whether it's a factory or a consumer wearing a wearable device, or sensors on cameras, on lights in cities, and all these things are happening. I want to get your reaction to that, because there's a difference between industrial IoT devices and consumer IoT devices. Both have different ramifications. 5G certainly is not so much a consumer as it is also a business technology, as you get the kind of throughput you're seeing. So both consumer and industrial enterprise capabilities are emerging. What's your position on that?
I think edge is one of those things that it's been hard for people to wrap their head around a bit, because what we deal with edge in our own personal lives, whether that be in our connected home or our mobile phone, that's one view of what edge does and one set of value that it does. But from a separate lens, edge is everything from how telco is deployed to how data is aggregated in from sensors and how decisions are made. I mean, we're seeing in spaces, whether it be in manufacturing and adding AI onto manufacturing floors. How do you have, in vehicles? I mean, vehicles are becoming sort of mobile software centers now. So there is a whole shift in edge that is different from Industry 4.0 and from kind of operational transformation edge that it's driving all the way into kind of the things that we see every day, which is more the mobile space and how our homes are connected. And I think now we're starting to see a real maturity in how the world views edge to be able to compartmentalize what enterprise edge is able to do, how edge can change operational technologies, as well as how edge can change kind of our daily lives.
Great vision, great insights, Stephanie. Awesome thought leadership there. I totally agree. I think it's exciting. You see confluence of so many awesome technologies in a bright future with the technology platforms and with society. Open now is de facto everything, not just in tech and truth, whether it's journalism or reporting, society, and security. Again, trust, open, trust, technology, all coming together. The confluence of all those is going on. So I think you got a great read on that. So thanks for sharing. Red Hat Summit, what's new? Tell us what's new here and what's being talked about that no one's heard before, and what's the existing stuff that's getting better.
Yeah, we'd love to. So we are really doubling down on edge within our portfolio. We have, you probably saw in November, we had some announcements both in OpenShift as well as in RHEL in order to add features and capabilities that deliver specifically for edge use cases. Things like the ability to do updates and roll back in a RHEL deployment. We are continuing to drive things into our product that cater to the needs of edge deployments. As part of that, we are engaged with a whole lot of customers today deploying their edge, and that's across industries, things from telco to energy to transportation. And so as we look at all of those cases that we've been kind of engaged with and delivering value to customers, we are bringing forward the Red Hat Edge brand. It's going to be our collection point to shine a spotlight for how the features and functions in our portfolio can come together and be used to deliver in edge deployments. It'll be our space where we can showcase use cases where we're seeing success with customers, but really to pull together, because it is a portfolio story and it's an ecosystem story. How do we pull that together in one spot? And in order to support that here at Summit, we are announcing some really key additions into RHEL 8.4 that really focus on the specific needs of what Edge is driving. You'll see things like the ability in RHEL to create streamlined OS image generation. And we can simply manage that into container images. That container magic, right, to be able to repeatably deploy an image, repeatably deploy an application out to the edge, that has become a key need in these edge deployments. So we've simplified that so operations teams can really meet the scale of their fleets and deploy it in a super consistent way. We've added capabilities, Image Builder we had brought out already, but we've added capabilities to create customized installation media. It simplifies for bare metal deployments. And as I mentioned, out at the edge where it's really small, bare metal deployments where you can bring that container right onto their bare metal, you can imagine a lot of situations where that brings a lot of value. We introduced in RHEL 8.0 Podman as our container engine, and we've added new automatic updates in that. So again, getting back to security fixes, simple to ensure that you have the latest security fixes, application updates, and we're continuing to add changes and updates into Universal Base Image. Universal Base Image is a collection of user space packages that are available to the community, fully redistributable. The goal of those user space packages is to enable developers to be able to create container images with those packages included, and then they can redistribute them when they're run on OpenShift or they're run on RHEL, so we can really work through that user space and that host matching, and we can stand behind that matching, then we can support it, but it allows for a lot of freedom and flexibility with Universal Base Image to really expand where we can go and help folks kind of create, deploy, and develop their applications. We're also moving into, I think, one of the things you see in Edge is a real industry slant. We're starting to see edge deployments take on real industry flavors. And so we are engaging in some spots, things like whether it be from automotive to industrial and operational technology, how do we engage in those industry verticals? How do we engage with the right partners? One of the things that's key that we're looking at, because it is core to what we do, is things like functional safety. And we're working with a company called Exida, who's a leader in this space for functional safety, for how do we bring that level of security and certification into the RHEL space when it's deployed out there at the edge. So it's an exciting space, everything from the technology to the partnerships to how we engage as industry verticals. But this is... I'm really excited to have the Red Hat.
I can tell. Super excited. One of the things that's interesting is that the little industry trivia is theCUBE's been around for 11 years now. We've been to all the Red Hat events and IBM events for many, many years. But I actually interviewed Arvind, who's now the CEO of IBM, who now owns Red Hat, at Red Hat Summit in San Francisco. Like, get this right, and of course I'm connecting the dots here in real time. It's an operating system that hits bare metal, open hybrid cloud, edge, public cloud, and across the enterprise. It's an operating system. Okay, so, we all know that. Okay, you apply that to a cloud operating model, you have some system software. So the question, which by the way is what's going to power the next gen cloud, I think is what Arvind wants and you guys hope. So the question for you, Stephanie, is what applications do you hope to create on top of, and what do you have today that RHEL is powering? Because if you have great system software like RHEL, that's enabling applications. I'm assuming that's cloud services, that's new cloud native. Take us through that part of the stack. What's your vision?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the key things that I would touch on is that it's part of the reason we build our portfolio the way we do, right? We have RHEL, of course, for your kind of Linux deployments that you described, but RHEL Core OS is part of OpenShift, and that consistency delivers into the platform, and then both of those can then serve the applications that you need to deploy. And we are really excited to be able to do things like work with the transportation industry, folks like Alstom, who do really bring edge capabilities all the way out into the rails of the train systems. From high-speed trains to metros to monorail, they have built their whole strategy on RHEL and Ansible automation platform. It's about the platform, just as you said, that operating system, delivering the flexibility to pull the applications on top. And those applications could be anything from things that require functional safety, right? Things like in vehicles, as an example, could be anything from artificial intelligence, which goes out into manufacturing. But having that stable platform underneath, whether or not you're using RHEL or OpenShift, that consistency, it opens up the world to how applications can be deployed on it. But I am super excited about what AI and machine learning out at the edge can do, and what being able to bring really hardened security capabilities out to the edge, what that opens up for new technologies and businesses.
That's super exciting. And I think the edge is a great exclamation point around any debate anyone might have had around what the distributed architecture is going to look like. It's pretty clear now what the landscape is from an enterprise standpoint. And given that, what should people know about the edge? What's the update? What's the modern takeaway now that obviously COVID has proven that there's a lot of edge applications that kind of were under forecast or accelerated, working at home, dealing with network security, you name it, it's been kind of over amplified for sure. But now that COVID's kind of coming, there's light at the end of the tunnel coming to an end, it's going to be still a hybrid world. Hybrid everything, not just hybrid cloud, hybrid everything. So edge now cannot be ignored. What should people take away from Red Hat Summit this year?
Absolutely. I think it's the possibilities that edge can bring, and there are different stages of maturity. Telco, beautiful example of how to deploy edge, and telco market as a market continues to drive the kind of pioneer what is done in edge. You see a lot of embedded edge, right? Things that you deploy or your business may deploy that is you purchase it from a company, and it's more embedded as an appliance level. And then there's what the enterprise will do with edge specifically for their businesses. What I think you'll see is a catch up across all of these spaces that those three are complementary, right? You may consume some of your edge from a partner in a full solution. You may build some of your own edge as you expand your data center and distribute it. And you may leverage, of course, you'll leverage what's being done by the telcos. So what I think you'll see is a balance in multiple types of edge being deployed and the different values that it can deliver.
Stephanie, final question for you, and thanks for taking the time. Great conversation, an interview here for Red Hat Summit. As a general manager, you're constantly talking to customers. I know that personally, you've told me that many stories off camera, but also you have to look inside the organization, run the business, keep an eye on the product roadmap, and make sure everything's pumping on all cylinders. What is the customers telling you right now? I mean, what's the common pattern that people are talking about, things that they're looking to do, projects they're funding? And what's the most important story that we should be covering? And what's the most important story people aren't talking about?
So I think one of the things I'm really seeing, as you mentioned at the beginning, we've been talking about open hybrid cloud for a long time. There was a period of time where hybrid cloud was happening to folks, or kind of it was a bit. Some of developers were using it from here. Now hybrid cloud is intentional. It is very intentional about how customers are strategically taking a view of what they deploy where, how they deploy it, and taking advantage of the optionality that hybrid can do. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about. I think the next steps that will happen is a balancing of how do they expand that out into, how do they balance a managed services addition into their hybrid cloud? How do they manage that with also having VMs and a large VM deployment on-prem? To me now, the biggest thing that is being looked at is how do companies make these decisions in a strategic way that is kind of holistic rather than making point decisions. And I am seeing that transition in the customers I talk to. It's not how do I deal with hybrid cloud, it's how do I make hybrid cloud work for me and really deliver value to me, and how do I make those decisions as a company. And honestly, that requires kind of what you talked about earlier. It requires within those customers to have the structure, the organizational structure, the communication, the transparency, the openness that you talked about. That takes a strategy like Open Hybrid Cloud a long way. So it's both the people and the process and the technology coming together.
You know, Stephanie, we do so many interviews on theCUBE, and you've been on so many times to go back and look back and say, you know, in that year, 2010, we were talking about this. I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about 2015. That was the big conversation of moving to the cloud. You know, and startups are all there, born in the cloud. So, you know, early generation was all about the startup cloud. They all got that. 2015 was like, move to the cloud. This year, the conversation isn't about moving to the cloud, it's about scale. And all those enterprise requirements now that are coming about from the hybrid, now that that's been decided, you're starting to see that operating model connect. So it's not so much moving to the cloud, it's I've moved to the cloud and now I got to run some now enterprise grade scale operationally. What's your reaction to that?
Absolutely. I mean, to me, I love the intentionality that I'm seeing now in customers. But when it comes down to it, it's about speed of deploying applications. It's about having the security and the stability in order to deploy that, to give you confidence in order to go out and scale it out. So to me, it is speed, stability, and scale. Those three comes together. And how do you pull that together with all of the choices we have today and the technologies today to deliver value and competitive differentiation?
Open source is winning, and you guys are doing a great job. Stephanie, thank you for coming on and spending so much time chatting here on theCUBE for Red Hat Summit. Thanks for your time.
Well, my pleasure, John. Good to see you.
Okay, great to see you. This is theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 21 Virtual. I'm John Furrier with theCUBE. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 2021 Virtual. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. CUBE Virtual, we're remote. We're not in person this year like last year. Soon, we'll be back in person. We've got a great guest here, Mark Potts, Managing Director at Accenture for the Red Hat relationship. Mark, great to see you. Thanks for coming on theCUBE.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. I really appreciate it.
We've been covering pretty extensively throughout this event, as well as the many years, the impact of cloud computing. Obviously, you guys have a really big strategic relation with IBM and now Red Hat. Red Hat's part of IBM. It's pretty clear that Red Hat's got this operating system mindset of open source and innovation. It's extending into cloud native, and edge, distributed computing. That's kind of in their DNA, if you will, distributed computing and system software and open source. Kind of the perfect storm. So, really interesting as this enables new services. You guys are on the front lines working with the biggest companies in the world as the global business is changing. So I want to get your take on Red Hat and what you guys are doing together. But first, give a quick overview of Accenture's role with Red Hat, your role there and what you do.
Yeah, thanks. Perfect, John. So Mark Potts, as you mentioned, I'm the managing director responsible for our global business with Red Hat and our partnership with Red Hat. As you probably saw in our announcements last fall around the September timeframe, Accenture made a very large, bold announcement about forming a new cloud-first business unit within Accenture. And so we're going to invest $3 billion into that business unit. We're going to dedicate over 70,000 people worldwide to that business unit and that cloud-first initiative. And as part of that cloud-first initiative, we've also developed our new hybrid cloud strategy. And we're looking for new partners and existing partners to help us grow in that hybrid cloud strategy and that hybrid cloud business. We see Red Hat as a very important partner in that business. And as you mentioned, they've also been, in the distributed computing for a long time. We also see them as a partner for clients that are lifting and shifting and migrating to the cloud on RHEL, like SAP and other workloads like that. And I'm excited to talk to you today about OpenShift and Ansible and all those great technologies that Red Hat brings to the table for our hybrid cloud approach and strategy.
It's awesome, great investment. I love what Paul Cormier was saying on his keynote. Every CIO should be a cloud operator. I mean, running business at scale, this is what hybrid cloud is all about. And so with your new hybrid cloud strategy and the formation of the new business group at Accenture, what kind of challenges are you guys looking to solve? What are the opportunities that you're seeing for companies? How do you guys solve those challenges? What are you guys looking at right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. As you mentioned, the keynote, so Karthik Narain, who actually runs our cloud first business, was actually part of that keynote with Larry Stack as well. As well. And so he mentioned in his keynote something called the cloud continuum, right? And so historically, Accenture has been working with our partner on cloud native development, moving to about 20 to 25% of the existing workloads in the data center, the easy stuff, to the cloud, right? But now we realize that there's a need for the hybrid cloud. There's a need to modernize maybe on-premise. There's a need to maybe modernize in the cloud, one way or the other. And then we also look at the holistic view of cloud, on-prem, edge. And that's what Karthik's talking about when he's talking about the cloud continuum. And that's a very important part of our strategy within Accenture. And OpenShift really helps us meet those needs. So if a client is a little bit nervous about taking some of those complex workloads, but they want to modernize and they want to use the latest and greatest cloud native technologies, but they want to do it on-prem and move to the cloud a little bit later, they can do that with OpenShift, right? And Red Hat. That's a great platform for that. Maybe it's a client that wants to lift and shift and get to the cloud as soon as possible, close their data centers, save that cost of money, and then modernize later. But they don't want to necessarily be locked into one cloud provider. Again, OpenShift is great for that. Take those legacy workloads that you move to the public cloud, modernize them on Red Hat OpenShift. Maybe it's ROSA on AWS, maybe it's ARO on Azure. And then when you're ready to, you can move those to any other public cloud if you'd like to. When you're ready to, right? And that whole control plane, as we call it, being able to see across public cloud, on-prem, the edge, is really important for our story and our strategy. And Red Hat OpenShift and Red Hat Satellite and those technologies bring a lot to the table for us to meet those needs of our clients and our customers.
That's great insight there, Mark. I really appreciate that. And one of the things brought up when you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, okay, the cloud conversation has many evolutions, and go back 5 years, it was, move to the cloud. Everyone was moving to the cloud. That was the big discussion point. Now it's, enterprise ready the cloud, get that next level scale. And as you know, in the enterprise, we do everything complicated. There's a lot of legacy and there's existing stuff. So this is the next enterprise at scale is the conversation that includes hybrid multi-cloud on the horizon. So with that, can you expand on what you mean by this cloud continuum that you refer to, that Accenture refers to, and what is needed to make it a reality for customers?
Yeah, I mean, what's really needed is the latest, greatest in hybrid cloud technology like OpenShift and what Red Hat brings to the table, right? It's also new skills and new capabilities and policy management and those types of things that are important for a company to decide when they're ready to move those workloads to the cloud, right? They need the ability to see across their entire infrastructure, like I mentioned earlier, whether that be a public cloud provider, whether that be in their existing data center, in a colo, or in the edge, like in a retail store or something like that. We need the ability to see across all that infrastructure as a single control plane, so we can manage and know where things are and feel confident about security and everything with our clients. The other big thing that we need is skills to build the migration, the modernization, and more importantly, the interaction and integration into legacy workloads like the mainframe, for example. Accenture's got a lot of use cases leveraging Red Hat OpenShift for a cloud coupling solution where we interact and build new applications that connect to the mainframe, sitting right next to the mainframe, but they're new digital mobile applications, web applications that can be quickly modified and deployed into production at a rapid pace, right? And so when we look at everything that's needed, it's skills, it's technology partners like Red Hat, and then it's really building assets and offerings to help make that journey for our clients better and secure.
We just found out here at the event that you guys at Accenture have been recognized as Red Hat's Global Systems Integrator Partner of the Year for North America. Congratulations on that. What do you see as some of the key reasons for the recognition? Was there anything that they called out in particular? Obviously, you guys have a great track record, well-known brand. You're known for creating a lot of value for companies as they do digital transformation. What's the recognition for this year?
Yeah, we're super excited about this, right? I mean, we've been partners with Red Hat for a long time. I think we are one of the first system integrators, if not the first system integrators to partner with Red Hat many years ago, right? So to get this award and get it for the first time is super exciting for us, right? And so we're very grateful for that recognition and that opportunity. I think what really got us the recognition for this award was really the effort we put into our partnership over the last 12 to 24 months, right? We had a really big business in Europe with GDPR and the risk averse of going to the public cloud. In Europe, OpenShift and Red Hat really had taken off. In North America, our business was lagging behind Europe, and we significantly invested with Red Hat in new offerings and new clients and new people, right? New talent to build a better business and partnership in North America. I think a lot of the things that we got recognized with were what I mentioned earlier. Some of our cloud coupling solutions for an insurance client in North America, where we're building cloud native applications on Red Hat, OpenShift sitting next to the mainframe. We're building new cloud native applications for a transportation company in the South region of the US, right? So it's really that business transformation work that we're doing, working with the legacy, but building new core applications for our customers that are truly portable, nimble, and agile, and they can use to get speed to the market and get to the cloud.
Cloud first organization, you guys are investing billions of dollars, $3 billion. That was referenced. I saw an article, I think we covered it as well on SiliconANGLE.com. Congratulations. Cloud first also implies that cloud native is going to be there. Mark, in all your years in the industry, talk about, from your personal perspective and even from Accenture's, the shift that's happening, because it's almost mind-blowing what's going on in the sense of so fast this is accelerated, even the pandemic accelerated even further. The opportunities that are available now that weren't there before, and what it's done to the project timelines, and what it's done as a forcing function. Could you share your view on the reality of the current situation and opportunities for companies to take advantage of that wave?
Yeah, and I think Accenture's done a great job talking about this recently, even from our C-suite down, right? And Karthik has mentioned this as well in his keynote. We are seeing an acceleration to get to the cloud that was completely unplanned for us. I think the numbers I heard was we thought most clients are going to get to the cloud in 8 to 10 years and be fully in the cloud in 8 to 10 years. But that's accelerated with COVID and the pandemic, right? We're looking at 4 to 5 years. We think most of our clients will be majority of their infrastructure and everything, and new applications and legacy applications will be in the cloud, right? So the change and the impact that the pandemic had a significant impact on our customers and their need to get to the cloud. We've even seen those that were leaders in the cloud journey accelerate even more, right? And they're being rewarded for that acceleration, right? A lot of our customers that were first to cloud are seeing the benefits and seeing the ability to scale for the pandemic, like a lot of our customers in the U.S. in particular. And I think OpenShift is going to help us with that, right? And Red Hat in particular. And let's not be lost on the fact that RHEL is a great product out there as well. We have many of our clients that are running SAP on RHEL, and that lift and shift of moving SAP to Azure or to AWS or Google or something like that is a viable solution to help accelerate our customers as they expand, right? We've seen internationally a lot of our customers that have been really focused just in their local region are now expanding their business outwards, and now they need to get to the cloud to be able to expand those businesses.
It's interesting, Mark, is, just as we were talking, think about my experience over the years in the computer industry. Everything had to displace something else, disrupt something. Mainframes were disrupted by client server. Now we're living in an era where with the containers and microservices and service meshes and cloud native technologies, you can embrace existing legacy and abstract away some of the complexity on the integration side, right? So you don't have to kill the old to bring in the new. And I think this phenomenon has opened up a new class of services. And the people I talk to and interview, the leaders in the industry, all have the same kind of view. And the ones that stand out are the ones that recognize that the operating system of business will be software, and that software hasn't yet been built, and cloud's the beginning. It's not just one cloud. So I think what's interesting about Red Hat is that they're operating system people, and you almost see Arvind kind of snapping the lines and kind of cornering the market on the operating system for business. And applications then are 1,000 flowers that bloom from that. So very interesting take here. Again, that's my opinion. I don't think they've said that formally, but if you look at it, that's kind of what's going on. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I mean, I also carry a little bit of the responsibility on the IBM side. And you mentioned mainframe, and I mentioned mainframe a handful of times, right? There's a lot of customers that have this legacy estate, like the mainframe in particular, but they need to be nimble, right? And need to be agile, and mainframe is a challenge sometimes around that, right? And so to your point, creating those applications that participate with the mainframe, allow the mainframe to participate better with these cloud native applications and these new digital transformation applications is a very key component to it. And so I 100% agree with everything you said. And I think we're going to see more around this operating system type software. And I almost to an extent, you kind of view Red Hat OpenShift as kind of that new operating system, right? And you look at some of the announcements that Red Hat has made around Palantir, right? And adding Palantir and ISVs to marketplace to allow customers that have bought OpenShift, or make it easy for clients to buy Red Hat OpenShift and then bring in these ISVs that have been certified, they're secure, they're easy to consume, and buy it through Red Hat's marketplaces is very exciting and very interesting and very easy to do, right? Once you get that Red Hat OpenShift layer in there, that operating system, and now you're bringing in products all over the place, right? And all the new stuff. And I think we're going to see a lot more of those announcements during Summit as well.
Yeah, I think it's a 20-year run here. It's trillions of dollars as it's been forecasted. Mark, great to have you on. Super valuable resource, great insight. While we got you here, let's get a quick free consulting minute here for the customers watching. What's your advice? I need some help here. I want to go to the cloud. I want enough headroom so I can grow into it. I don't want to foreclose any opportunities. I want to move to the cloud. I want to have a hybrid distributed computing architecture. I want to program my business. I want infrastructure as code. I want DevSecOps. What's my playbook? What should I do?
Yeah. So Accenture's got a real smart approach and strategy around this. We leverage an assessment approach really to look at what's in your data center today and what you have from an infrastructure and application standpoint. We have what we call 6 Rs. We have a 7th R where it can completely rewrite an application. And we would apply those 6 Rs or 7 Rs to that assessment to help you figure out the disposition of your applications and your infrastructure to figure out what is the right cloud, what's the right journey. I mean, we talked about, the mainframe and mainframe being an anchor in a lot of our clients' data centers, right? How do we move those applications that have data gravity challenges to those legacy applications to the cloud? How do we consider that? So the right way to do it is take a holistic approach, do the assessment, do the disposition of your applications, and then let's let Accenture put together a full plan of how we would migrate you into those into the public cloud.
Mark Potts, Managing Director of Accenture, congratulations on your North America Award Partner of the Year, and also awesome to hear, and we've been covering, again, cloud first, totally believe it. Great investment, that's going to pay back huge dividends for you guys, and having the hybrid, which is pretty much determined as a fact now in the industry. Congratulations, thanks for coming on.
Perfect, thanks for having me, and thank you Red Hat for the award. Really appreciate it, and look forward to talking to everybody soon.
All right, this is theCUBE's coverage of Red Hat Summit 2021 Virtual. This is theCUBE Virtual, I'm John Furrier, your host, thanks for watching.